I am Chip Meehan. I am chair of the Studio City Neighborhood Council Ad Hoc Committee reviewing the Harvard Westlake proposal to develop the Weddington Golf and Tennis Facility. I'm calling this meeting to order on Monday, June 19th at 6:09 p.m. I will take attendance. Chip Meehan, I am here. Terry Austin is not here, but she is on her way. Alexander Black is not attending. Peter Cole is not attending today. Heidi McKay.
Here.
Thank you. Lori Young.
Here.
Lori Rittenberg.
Here.
Melanie Winter.
Here.
And Scott Mandel.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum. And Terry should be here, but we're going to start moving forward. Comments from the chair, which would be me. I just wanted to make sure that, and we have a smaller group today, but I'm going to say it just for pro forma, that for public comment, it is not the role of the committee to converse with the public when the stakeholders are expressing their opinion. We are not to set the record right. We are not to correct anything. We are to respectfully consider that input in our deliberations later and move on. We got a little sloppy with that last week, and I don't want to do that again. I'm going to run through just the history of the project and the Studio City Neighborhood Council responses to get us all on the same page. We have three new members to the committee today. We have Lori Young. Lori, wave for the camera. Camera's over there. Melanie Winter is a veteran. I am a veteran of this. Scott, you know. Heidi McKay is new to the committee, and Lori Rittenberg is new to this committee, but has been on several neighborhood council committees over the course of time. But just to get everyone together, the neighborhood council historically had been silent on the Harvard Westlake.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's a dog calling. The Harvard Westlake development since December of 2017. Initial notice of preparation, no comment. At the last minute during the public window of the DEIR review, the former president asked to have a quick response. We did a quick response with an ad hoc that was put together last year, this time, and came up with a decision at that point. That motion is in the agenda, that we were not prepared to actually comment on the DEIR, but needed another committee to investigate the issues and to also collaborate with the applicant on solutions to some of the outstanding issues. That unfortunately did not make it into the public record before the public comment window closed, but it was in the public comment. The ad hoc committee that was formed, ad hoc 2, if I may, after ad hoc 1, worked through the summer and fourth quarter, and in December finalized their work, and a motion was presented to the board in a special meeting in January of 2023, where the Studio City Neighborhood Council board approved the motion to oppose the project as it was then currently submitted. The two biggest issues that were called out were greenhouse gas emissions, because the DEIR showed more than a threefold increase in greenhouse gas emissions over the current operation of the Weddington Golf and Tennis Facility. And there were then, and continue to be now, issues with the artificial turf. The ad hoc committee did not think that artificial turf, based on the evolving and alarming body of research, is a safe and sane way to actually equip a facility in the neighborhood. So that went out that way. There are documents floating around that were a follow-up to the special meeting that Scott and I had with Harvard Westlake. We had a conversation with them, came up with a 6-page memo, which went to them in February. They answered that memo in April. That response is in here as well. We took a look at some of the the broader issues that were at play. Nothing has happened since then, except the FEIR has fallen. We've all had a chance to look at the FEIR. Realistically, it's 1,600 pages, 16,000 pages. There are some good executive abstracts that are part of it, and there's a good section in there showing differences from the DEIR to the FEIR, so you can kind of see the changes. Where we sit right now is the ad hoc is going to have to figure out what we want to do moving forward. So we'll join that conversation after we have public comment on non-agenda items, which I will commence now. Are there public comments?
We have a card from Not Goat Puppet's son. That be you? Are we timing?
Yes. Based on the giant crowd, we'll go for 90 seconds, sir. Would that be adequate?
Nothing's ever happened.
Yes.
90 seconds would be perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for even holding this committee. If you were Van Nuys neighborhood council, they would never hold this committee because they're just not that smart, nor do they care about the resources. This is like giving money away to nonprofits that have suspended corporations or defunct 501c status with the IRS. I sent out an email this weekend according to Dunn's roster of all neighborhood council members, and out of the 1,600, 125 got kicked back. They don't update the roster very well, and I asked who does it, and of course, Dunn's position is, I don't know. So that's another issue. If you want to go to VNNC.info, that's Victor, Nora, Charles.info. Go to legal, you can see a criminal pleading with Mr. Curran Price. That's always a nice read. Second of all, about the new Public Records Act. If you want to read that, that's on number 2. I'll be posting a lot of other issues regarding SB 411, the opposition letter done by myself and other entities regarding why it's kind of unlawful to do what they're trying to do, making it exclusively remote and this carve out. So that'll be fun. People should probably be suing the board members for $1,500 for civil rights violation. That is a small claims court. Oh, the city defends everybody. They probably won't. They'll probably cry that it's your fault and go after your homeowner's policy. How much more time do I have?
Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to say one quick thing, but I didn't fill out a card.
You know something? You don't need
I
to
just
fill
want to
it.
ask, do you want me to list off the experts that we're looking into? Or did you get a list?
No, I don't.
Would you like me to read them off?
If you can send it,
Okay. Well, I haven't typed it up, it's all written,
okay.
but I can type it up now while we're doing this. I don't have to.
Don't you need to know?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna send it.
We don't need to know right now, but it'd be good to know.
So that is in reference to, so Patty, what are you providing?
The list of experts that we're looking into to comment on the FEIR
Okay. And do you have any idea what kind of timing they're looking at?
before July 12th.
Okay. Cool.
I left my phone in my car, so I can't do it. I can read them off from memory if you want.
That's all right. Because we should probably have something we could actually. Okay. Is there a third public comment? Okay. I'm calling that the end of public comment at that point. There are no government representatives I see in the office, in the audience, so that's up there. So we're going to go right to the meat of the meeting, which is, what do we do, folks? And just for the record, Terry Austin is here. See you, Terry.
Thank you.
So, just so you know, you missed Terry, Alex and Peter. Peter was never going to be able to be here today. He'll be here Thursday if we have that meeting with his sound demonstration. Alexander is in Hawaii and thought it was a Zoom, so he will not be able to join. So we should be okay, except that there's a divot on the quorum issue, but we're fine today. So FEIR versus DEIR. The sustaining issue of artificial turf went out the way we thought it was going to. The city is not going to question artificial turf, because to do so would essentially question their own behavior. So from what I see, and please correct me if I'm wrong, they have a green light for the artificial turf. So what do we want to do about that? The greenhouse gas question that we brought up the other day, that we worked on all fourth quarter, all fall. There's some movement on that in a couple different directions. One, not at the initiative of Harvard Westlake, but that is as a result of losing 100 and some odd subterranean parking spaces, there will be less greenhouse gas. I've not been able to, yes?
Oh, but only from the truck emissions, but the rest, there's other.
Yeah, the
areas
actual,
of-
the excavation and the haul and the curing of the concrete will be reduced. I mean, not a de minimis amount, it's still a big issue, but it's somewhat smaller. The other thing that we learned in the subsequent meeting with Harvard Westlake was that the modeling that they used in the DEIR, which I didn't see in it, it needed to be explained to me, models all of the athletic events currently taking place on the upper campus. For purposes of modeling, they've assumed all of the activity would be on the current Weddington site. The logic behind that is it's the worst case scenario. So the conversation could be pursued with the applicant if you're going to split it up 50-50, where only half of the current activity is going to be moved down the hill. What does that really look like in terms of the number of transits, the number of people, the number of events, and what is the real greenhouse gas emission that would hit Weddington? And then we would also at that point have a chance to quantify the impact of less activity on the upper campus. So that's something we could look at down the road as well. There is an openness to discuss operating the facility potentially maybe in a carbon neutral manner with the existing facility.
Meaning?
Meaning that at this point, there's 1,000 and change metric tons of greenhouse gas emitted by the current gas and tennis operation. They would be open to try to find a way to keep the operation, not construction, of the new facility in and around the range of what's currently happening. Just wanted to put that out there, that was a question that was discussed. Other than that, there's nothing substantial in the DEIR that's different from the FEIR that I saw, unless you guys saw big things. Heidi?
Well, not so big, but omissions, like other things that contribute to the greenhouse that I didn't find in there that you can chime in, but I don't know, did they consider the loss of the mature tree canopy that contributes to heat island effect, which elevates temperatures that can directly increase the rate of ground level ozone formation? Did they discuss that? No. The differential between the absorption of CO2 from mature trees and that of new trees was not figured into their GHG emissions either. And valley fever, which isn't, but it's still relevant, it's prevalent in San Fernando Valley, in undisturbed soil was not addressed, and therefore no mitigation measures were taken. these are all, I mean, valley fever is a very serious and real thing. But the other two are contributing to the greenhouse production that they didn't have, did they, in the DEIR or the FEIR? And
They didn't, to my knowledge. I also,
Excuse me, you should probably set up number 5 with all the points we're gonna go over, then go to public comment, and then we can all discuss.
Oh, we're not discussing that?
Yeah, we will.
So,
I thought we were talking about greenhouse gases.
No, we're on item number 5, I believe.
right,
So
and,
Chip is gonna set up the points, we'll go to public comment for their input, and then we'll discuss.
Okay,
okay, so,
And there was one more I just want to add to that, but I'll wait till later then?
Yeah.
'Cause
well,
the
actually, it
methane-
needs to be now because it needs to get some public comment.
Okay.
So,
Well, then the methane.
wait, hang on.
Yeah.
What you just said is different to what Scott just said.
is it, I thought we had to have a list of all the topics we're going to discuss and then throw that open to public comment and then we can talk about it.
So on the
Is that
agenda,
Yeah,
correct?
that's what we're doing.
okay, so what action is recommended? So, but Scott was wanting us to stop and go to public comment.
We can't hear you.
No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down, as people are throwing out ideas, like Great Valley Fever, right? So I'm going to write these down and then I'm going to sit there and say, these are the individual topics we're going to discuss
Okay,
and then invite public comment on
so
that.
Scott wasn't stopping you.
He wanted to make sure I had the list.
Got it. Good, we're good.
So,
And then just one more thing to that, the methane, carbon dioxide, and other emissions from the artificial turf that they insist on, degradation do not seem to be added to the computations as well. Is that,
I would also add that they haven't accounted for,
I would also add they haven't accounted for scope 3 emissions at all.
what is a scope 3 emission?
scope 3 includes the emissions associated with the sourcing and production of materials. So concrete and steel are very heavy in scope 3 emissions. They are not accounting for the scope 3 emissions here. They're accounting for the construction impact. So once the materials get to site, they're accounting for the greenhouse gas emissions.
So the scope 3 emission actually is the far off-site production of the raw materials that will be used.
That's where it's one of the largest contributions to global greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay.
Concrete and steel and their scope 3.
Going back to your methane, to make sure I capture that when we throw this back out for public comment. So the methane issues you had were the artificial turf and,
well, the methane, carbon dioxide, and other emissions from artificial turf degradation were not added to their computations. So the artificial turf emits
right.
greenhouse gas.
So the artificial turf is treated as something inert in the DEIR and the FEIR?
Well, it wasn't, they didn't take into account that it also, when you're playing on it, it's breaking down and releasing.
Okay. Melanie, did you do something besides scope 3?
Yeah, it's not on greenhouse. It's not on greenhouse gas emissions, though.
Okay.
In talking to people, it seems that proposing a CUP that would be more in line with what a CUP is supposed to be, rather than the statement of objectives, which seems to be all they really have produced, and they keep referencing that. The Golf and Tennis has a CUP, and that would not allow Harvard Westlake to build. So I think they're just, anyway, from what I can tell, despite all the circular references in the FEIR, I haven't seen a list that specifies the CUP. And if there is one, it's not meeting the way the community would define a CUP. We're not driving this. So I've heard a lot of comments on the need to have a stronger conditional use permit. And so I've got a list of things that have come up in conversation, and I'll run through them now.
And these are all CUP points. Fire
They're all
away.
CUP points, and a couple of them are actually like alternative proposals, but I'll start with that there seems to be some issues around people being nervous about Upper Weddington claiming to have a CUP, but not really having a CUP, and what are the long range plans for Harvard Westlake in general. So there's been a proposal to combine the upper campus and the Weddington, so we get a clear CUP for both and transparent CUP for both, which would include capping enrollment at Harvard Westlake. And keeping the existing field and pool at the upper campus and providing their long-range plan. For Harvard Westlake, an alternative proposal, and perhaps into the CUP, yeah, I guess the CUP would be no pool, no field B, and a smaller gym, which would not include a concession stand or a teen store, and would only have one basketball court. No additional parking on site. Harvard Westlake must use electric shuttles from their upper campus. Off-site student and family parking would be prohibited in the neighborhood. A contiguous minimum 5-acre public park with access to the greenway at the west end. No greenway encroachment. Protection of all perimeter trees. Native landscape plan that is in line with what they proposed, except that it would also specify field turf with low water demand and a prohibition on the use of pesticides, rodenticides, chemical fertilizers, and artificial grass. Rehab the Clubhouse Cafe as their promising. Keep the putting green and the iconic golf ball. They're already saying they're going to get Clubhouse and the cafe to be managed by a community workforce cooperative. So rather than having Harvard Westlake run the cafe, it would be done collaboratively through a community cooperative that is aligned with workforce development. A dedicated community room that seats 200 that would prioritize the community and would allow Harvard Westlake to use it if the community wasn't using it. That would be, reservations would be managed by the community cooperative. Wouldn't have to be pre-approved to use it by Harvard Westlake. Shared use of tennis courts. Reservations managed by the community cooperative. Solar panels over the surface parking. 10 EV charging stations. Stormwater from all structures and solar panels captured and managed for reuse. Fund community parkway basins and street trees on
Sorry,
Babcock.
1 second. So solar over the park, surface marking, 10 EV.
Stormwater from all structures and solar panels captured / managed for reuse. Fund community parkway basins and street trees on Babcock, Beaman, Teasdale, and Bel Air, and/or create stormwater infiltration galleries beneath the alley west of Whitsett to reduce flooding impacts at the courts there.
So Beaman, Babcock, and
Teasdale and Bel Air.
you want the bioswales there?
Yeah, parkway basins and street trees, and/or green alley. Stormwater infiltration basins along the alley. Limited number of special events per year to be determined, max 400 attendees at any given event. Weekday use 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. No weekend use except for approved special events, pre-approved special events on Saturdays.
So are you talking even Saturday mornings? Because all the the contest should happen Monday through Friday, right? Friday night lights, so there really aren't any high school
It's the
athletics
same.
should happen on Saturday morning?
If they need a special event, they could ask for approval for a special event on a Saturday, but the community gets it Saturday, Sunday, and every day up until 3. Lower height on the lighting. And this is my furthest reach, no night lights during nesting season. That probably, yeah. Noise measurements recorded consistently, and this is stakeholder request, noise measurements requested consistently, 24/7, 365, it's during operational hours every day of the year at several designated sites along the project perimeter, measuring both community noise level equivalents and peak noise level originating from the project. Maximum peak noise level should not exceed a level to be determined, and data must be publicly accessible. That's my list for a CUP and an alternative plan, doing the measuring on what they want to build and how a field needs to be oriented and its proposed size and a smaller gym. It seems easy to be able to fit in field A, the gym, and even some improvements to the tennis court and an access ramp within the site, and leave the requested amount of space for the community.
Laura Young, do you have a list?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Karen? Terry,
A list?
do you have a list?
I do. It's not a complete list because I thought that this was going to be in process, so. it was-
Well, it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
but that's why I don't have
Yeah.
complete a list as Melanie. But it is, my list is similar. No pool, one field. Field B with the track to be removed because it does encroach on the zone.
So, I'm sorry, so A is the north-south on the east side?
Yes,
Okay, so B is the one that's more to the west?
Correct.
So you want to lose B as well?
Right.
Okay.
And the contiguous acreage for the park would be on the north side of the property, on the Valley Spring Bel Air side, retaining the all the trees that go up to what is now the north side of the 8th hole. And that's 3 stands of trees that are not Mexican fan palms, but are primarily cedar, eucalyptus, and a California pine. And then there's some other species that are mixed in there. But it's the north side of the property.
And those stands you're talking about are currently on what they envision to be Field B, so they're
Exactly.
destined to come
Yeah,
down?
and where the pool is. So no extra parking, no underground parking. And what was the other thing, excuse me? And again, a reduction in lighting, and also what am I saying? I'm just trying to picture in my head my drawing. Jackson lighting. And that if there is not a plaza area built, that there would be an opportunity to retain at least part of the driving range, so that the property could retain its historical use as a golf course. And again, I didn't bring a complete list, but I think the most egregious things to me right now is that for the community is the actual size of the project. So definitely the CUP would be scaling back the project and creating a real park.
Yeah.
Lori, do you have a list?
Yeah, I do. I would like to lose Field B, lose the pool, and I don't, that would create room for 8 more tennis courts, so would continue to have 16 tennis courts, and it probably would allow for a driving range. I want to have a driving range and 16 tennis courts by losing the pool and losing Field B. Also, I want clarification on public access to the tennis courts, because Harvard Westlake's website is is a bit, it isn't clear to me. And also, I mean, I don't believe that in general, per Harvard Westlake's website, in general, the public will have access to the tennis courts from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then 6 p.m. until closing. I really want more clarification on that. And also, just as an anecdote, in terms of what's going on there now at the tennis courts, I learned from my tennis coach today that starting today for 4 weeks, Harvard Westlake will be taking over 10 of the courts from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. 9 until 4, and the coaches will take the other 6. So no one can use the courts from 9 to 4 for 4 weeks. And I think that just kind of gives you an idea of what Harvard Westlake intends to do.
So with regards to, so you're talking Monday through Friday from 7 a to 3 p, and Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 is what you're seeing now?
That's what's happening for 4 weeks starting today.
But what is the current, do they say anything about Saturday, Sunday tennis in?
No, she didn't say that. I don't know if it's.
Well, not she, but does Harvard Westlake make
I
it?
don't know. I don't know about that, but I think we need real clarification and real commitment because they've been so vague about it.
What would serve to make you comfortable? I mean, and what I'm getting at here is we're gonna have to ask the question.
For the
So-
CUP to actually, indicate, I'd like to, make, in terms of a recommendation, I think the public should have access, most of the time, especially on the weekends, but during the week as well. I really haven't thought about how much, I just kind of wanted clarification. But I also want to have 16 courts like we have now. And because it's already almost impossible to get a court. I mean, it isn't at Harvard Westlake now. Well, it will be for the next 4 weeks, and it was kind of hard last summer as well. And in terms of what the FER calculated, in terms of how many hours how many hours of tennis is being played now, as well as golf, and how many hours of golf and tennis that will be played when this facility is redone. It'll be the same. That's not true, or it's even if it would be close to true, it isn't. It's deceiving because they're including hours like in August and September. From 11 to 4 probably, when it's very hot. It's hard to play tennis and hard to play golf. I don't know much about golf, but I just think that I really would love to see keep a driving range and have 60 courts, because otherwise there's just almost impossible to get a court anywhere else. And there's what golf courses do we have nearby now? We've got Balboa, and that's about it. Also, and I'm sure that, I don't know how proud of that is, but I'm sure it will be. Also, I love the idea of electric car charging stations. I think that's great. 10, great, more maybe. That's terrific.
Weren't there some in there, or am I getting it confused with a different project?
Oh, they were talking about, they didn't specify how many, they just said we're gonna do
Okay.
all the sustainable stuff.
I also
Well, that's cool.
I know.
love the idea of more solar panels in addition to what's going to be.
Over the surface parking.
Yeah, I
That's,
think I love that, yeah. And, but a lot, really everything Melanie and Terry said and everything has been said, but those are the things I mentioned in my focus.
okay.
Main focus.
You have more to add?
I just wanted to note that it is physically impossible to keep the driving range and have a public park on the site. Yeah. So if losing a pool and field B can give us public park, but there's not, if we keep the tennis and one field and a small gym, there's no space left over for driving.
I have a diagram that shows that
We should
it's
stick
different.
to the
Because I know the
plates
area-
and then
Yeah,
the
before
list,
we get,
before we deliberate,
I just want to
go
make
to the
sure,
public and then come back.
yeah, I just want to make sure we get to all the points.
Sure.
Laura, has anything else come to mind for you?
Oh,
That
I'm
was-
just wondering, I mean, I apologize because I'm new.
No,
so
totally.
don't know how
I mean-
this all works. And it seems like everybody was having suggestions about what they would like out.
And since we're going to discuss, what we have to do is, I've got to roll through the topics that we're going to discuss, ask the public if they have comments about that, and hopefully if I put them all out there at once, we can have one body of comment on all the issues, as opposed to if we had 36, we'd have to have public comment on each of the 36 different issues. So I'm trying to get the mass of things in the first swell foop that we're gonna kind of talk about, get public comment on that, and then we'll go back and we'll discuss it.
Okay, because it seemed like everything was coming out.
Well, we can get back to that, but that's more discussion than topics. One more topic?
One more thing? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I also, I don't know if we can have more limited excavation, because if the valley fever issue is really huge. That's really a huge issue, and also that would cut down on the carbon emissions of hauling the dirt away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no subterranean, I think it's just for the subterranean parking. So.
Well, the other subterranean element of it is the underground.
Cisterns.
Oh, right.
Well, the cisterns is the one, and then the third really big one is under the gyms. So if that's what we have for starters, what I'd like to do is run.
I got a couple.
Uh-oh. Scott, do you have anything to suggest?
Sure, going off the agenda, should we keep the Thursday, June 22nd ad hoc meeting? I say no, because there's a meeting here on the lot for the Radford project, and I think we should try doing that on Friday.
Do we went on Friday?
The second
Ad hoc?
meeting.
On a
I
Friday
was kind
night.
of hoping we could wrap up this meeting.
I was hoping we could have it a
We
little bit
can't.
earlier so we could do back to back.
Well, we have the Radford meeting the same night.
The Radford,
Right, so that starts at,
5:30.
oh, it starts 5:30, I thought
Yeah.
it was later.
No, theirs is 5:30, so we could start
Going
at
to
7.
at least 7:30,
Oh, yeah.
and it's gonna go over.
No, it's not, no.
So,
Yeah, so
again, it's a,
it's
it's
tough to
it's a
get.
tough night.
Yeah,
We can bring that up later, I guess. Because remember, we have a special board meeting tentatively scheduled for the 26th. So we're gonna need something for the 26th, and we'll need a second meeting, because we don't have a listing of a motion for tonight's meeting, so there will not be a motion tonight. We have to get through a lot of items that were discussed. So we have the July 12th public hearing, and then we have the City Planning Commission hearing. We also need to define and get probably Harvard Westlake to define what community means and what public means. Because they're mixing and matching community versus public. And they're implying that community means that you're an established type of a group, a nonprofit, a club, you filled out a waiver, you have liability insurance, and you have a schedule. Public means you walk over there and you want to do power walking on the track when the school isn't using it, and that's not going to happen. Or use their pool, or all the other things that most of the members of the public assumed they were going to have access to. So we need to get the definition of community versus public and then work on that. So we can do that after we get the public's input. And that's really it. I mean, I'll be happy to talk about all those. It would have been nice to have the lists passed out rather than having to write them down, but that's a whole other story. I didn't write them all.
I think I might have gotten them all.
you can double check with me because I have it written.
No, for us.
I know, but
So,
unless it was agendized, correct me if I'm wrong, but unless it was agendized, it wouldn't have been valid anyway.
I'm going to read Terry?
Thank you. Just briefly, I wanted to concur with something that Scott said that I meant to mention, I forgot, about the security check-in. About, one of the things for the CUP is that I find that the requirements to use the property are pretty, very restrictive and hard for the average person to comply with, because it does specifically say that the facilities will be open to people who belong to nonprofit organizations. And so what I think that is what Scott was saying. So we want a clarification on what is allowed in terms of the sports facilities, not just the walking trail.
Right, and we'll definitely get to that, because we can flesh out where there are two clouds of partial answers.
And the only other thing that I'm not clear of, and I haven't been able to get an answer from any of the parties involved, is that 4.5 acre park, or rather 5.4 acre park, what constitutes that? Is part of it the tennis courts? Because tennis courts can be called open space. So I'm curious exactly of the cobbled together part, where is, like, I'd like to see a map of where exactly 5.4 acres are. We know 1.1 of it is the ZEV. So if that's included in the 5.4 acres, where's the rest of it?
Okay, let's come back to the acreage
I
of
know where
park.
this is, right?
Oh, I know where this is.
Okay, let's not deliberate till we go for the public comment first. That's okay. I'm gonna run through these. Some of these will be redundant because there's actually agreement on the committee. Imagine. So we'll run through this and then we'll go to public comment. So one, greenhouse gas, we need to figure out what that looks like. Greenhouse gas has a question of where is the artificial turf in that computation? Where is the scope 3 emissions, and is that something they even want to discuss? Do we have any leverage to have them do that? What do we do about methane generally? Because it's more of a problem than CO2, and it's sort of vague about where that is. We would need to have them take us through that. And again, to Patty's point, someone that had some credentials beyond their name would be important, because even if we sit there and do the math properly without a credential, we'll be discredited. So we definitely need someone to help us go through that, or somebody does. There is concern about mature versus new plants in terms of carbon sequestration, tree canopy benefits of filtration and cooling. We need to have a discussion about that. Valley fever is not discussed at all in the FEIR. DEIR.
Yeah, it is. Sorry.
Okay. So we'll discuss that.
Yeah.
The CUP has always been sort of the linchpin in this. Harvard Westlake has agreed with that all the way through. They have agreed that the CUP is critical because their assumption is everything they're asking to build is essentially within scope and they should be able to get that. So therefore, their point is the CUP is what we should be talking about. Part of the CUP is a demand that it be community-driven, not handed by Harvard Westlake. We need to discuss the linking of an upper CUP, an upper campus and the lower campus CUP. I would even hazard to say that we should discuss all three campuses.
Yes.
And we take a look at the 29 acres across Coldwater. That is something that was brought up by Scleros in 2018. I think it's something we could revisit. We want to talk about capping enrollment. We want to talk about losing the lower pool, keeping the upper pool, so all swim activities would happen up there. We want to lose Field B. We want the gym, which is currently 2 bays, to lose the concession stand, lose the store, and come down to 1 gym. That was one of the suggestions. We want there to be no subterranean parking, only surface parking. Participation in any event would be shuttled from the upper campus. We want at least 5 acres and contiguous open space as a public park. We want no greenway encroachment. We'll have to discuss what that means and then what we mean by it. We needed to talk, we want to protect the perimeter trees, no artificial turf, no toxins in the maintenance and utilization, and we want to use environmentally friendly turf. We want to keep the clubhouse as is with the putting green and yada. We want a community workforce, not the current operators of the restaurant, to be people that run the restaurant, and there to be job training as part of that. We want a community room of 200 with dominance for the community. Harvard Westlake can have it when the community doesn't need it. We want the tennis community to have their own cooperative that handles all of the reservations for court times.
Could be the same cooperative that's managing the cafe and the clubhouse.
Okay. We want solar panels over the surface parking. We get specific about the number of EV charging stations. All the stormwater needs to be recaptured. Beaman, Babcock, Teasdale, and Bel Air. We want on those perimeters there to be stormwater catchment
And infiltration.
and infiltration infrastructure. We want the limit to the number of events, 400 maximum people at any one event. I'm assuming at that point too, we're going to want to say no more than one event at a time. We don't want two simultaneous events with 400 people. We want to get clarification on Monday through Friday, 3 to 8, and Saturday special events, but we're asking that Harvard Westlake have access to this facility only, Monday through Friday, 3 to 8, and Saturday with permission.
Noise measurement.
Then we're gonna go to Saturday, Sundays open to the public, lower the lights. No light during nesting season. There should be 24/7, 365 sound. That'll be both the community levels and peak. We also need to come up with what the enforcement will be for violation. Terry brought up no pool, lose B, save the trees that are on the site of the proposed B field. Keep all the trees on the perimeter as well, along Valley Spring and Bel Air. No subterranean parking, less lighting, keep the driving range, and increase the acreage of the park. Lori says lose B, lose the pool, 8 more tennis courts and the driving range, and clarify the tennis hours. And Scott says, do we need the 6:22 meeting? What do we do about getting a motion out? How do we mechanically want to do that, knowing that we have a scant quorum of existing board members for 6:26? And there is no date available for the existing board to entertain a motion from this committee. If they don't, the new board gets sworn in on 7/19. That's a week after 7/12. There won't be a motion responding to the FEIR if we don't figure out how to do this between now and Thursday. And then the new board can pick it up. And also Scott's other point is we need to really clarify the semantic issue that I think all of us have wrestled with over the course of time with what is community and what is public access. So that's what we have now. I think once we go through all of this, it's likely that we're going to take a look and say, did we miss anything? Then if we did, we'll add the new topics on the second pass and then offer the second pass of topics up to the public for public comment in a tranche again. With that, is there public comment on the first tranche of information? Patty?
I forgot to add that we don't want encroachment on the county property. That's our property. And we don't want we need to figure out the safety factors of the firehouse entrance, which is the same entrance as the buses, the trash trucks, dump trucks, everything is going to be entering through right next to the fire department where they go out and in. and no left turn lane.
Heading north on Woodson. Isn't that in the
They can't send
proposal?
the cars to Interval. If it has to be.
There isn't one. There isn't one in the plan.
There
for
isn't?
left turn lane.
No, there's not. Um, So there's two comments, which I believe are saying the same thing. You're proposing that there would be right turn only coming out of the facility, which would take vehicles to Ventura Boulevard. And that's what you're saying too, Lisa?
No, I'm saying that I don't believe the city allowed that to happen because the whole purpose of this specific plan is to monitor how many cars go onto Interval from the rest of the area.
And I suggest they move the entrance because it shouldn't be by the fire department.
Okay. Are there any other public comments on the topics you brought up? Yes?
They didn't list what the measure of the immediate release of the carbon from cutting all of the trees, because all those trees full of carbon will be immediately released as carbon dioxide into the air. So that wasn't listed on the report. They didn't hear that being taken into account. And also, the excavation will leak in that area by the wash, the river. And it goes to the soil. But they said it will take 50 years for their new trees to get to the point of how they're sequestering carbon right now. So when they plant their new trees, not for 50 years, will they take as much carbon, clean the air like the mature trees are now.
Okay. I hear your comment, and again, the point is in public comment to hear what everyone has to say and not correct the record as we go through it, so we'll come back to the issues. Anything else? Yes?
I don't know about construction and carbon and valley fever, but any construction project is gonna have those issues. And so, how do you remediate those with any construction project? I mean, valley fever, they keep the dust down, keep the dust down. I mean, I don't know how you build anything because these big, huge holes in the ground are, obviously stir up dust, but they do have rules about dust protection. Anyway, that's just a comment. I know this is a comment, I guess. My big thing that I disagree with is I'm for the parking lot. You've got kids going and working out and doing tennis and doing soccer practice and doing lacrosse practice, and they're teenagers, they have cars, and people are gonna come visit the sports. I mean, there's gonna be a soccer game, who knows which day of the week. There's gonna be people watching it, and maybe just 50 people, but where are these people gonna park? There's no parking in that area. And if there's no parking lot, all these parents that are going to watch the sports events are going to be on, what's it? I don't know, where do they go? Into the neighborhoods? There's no parking, okay? You've gotta have a parking place. There are gonna be events there and there's no getting around it. Tennis tournaments. My guess is they're not gonna go away from the pool idea. I talked to somebody yesterday and they're big on this pool and they're gonna have swim meets. So I think having a underground parking lot, I mean, I'd much rather have an underground parking lot where you can't see it than one above ground where you've got this big, massive, ugly structure, so, and to save space. I'd love to see more tennis courts, but I don't know where you can take it out of the whole picture of things. But another thing with the pool is they said that will be open to publics on weekends and summers and have classes. I mean, you can call them liars, but if you get it in writing and they say the pool will be open from 8 a.m. to noon for instructing preschoolers on how to swim and provide water safety. I mean, it's in writing and you gotta hold them to it, I guess. You can't just say they're a liar and they're not gonna open it up. You know, I do have another question on this, on this picture, I just saw this. The blue outer metal fence, is this accurate? Do you have any idea?
Could we come back to that?
Okay, oh, that's not on that, okay.
Yeah,
I just,
but I appreciate that.
yeah.
And I'm putting you down as pools of community benefit.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Anything else?
All right, well,
Lisa?
so the CUP will have the rules of what they have to follow. I'm not saying the city enforces anything, don't get me wrong. But all of you guys and everyone around there will know what the rules are. And whatever hours it's open for whoever, whatever the definition is of whether it's a, what did I write down? What did you guys say for the, whether the public or it's community organization? I don't believe that it's restricted to just community organizations. I think that they will have it open to whoever is going to show wanting to come there. Either you make a reservation or you don't, or whatever it is, but also you have to have some kind of identification, because nobody gets let onto a school without something like that. So other than that, everything will be in the CUP. And so whatever you want, you need to be in the CUP, including the hours of when the neighborhood people, maybe you want to use that word, the neighborhood. Because at one time they said discuss the enrollment you people from Studio City would use the facilities. So that might be something you want to write in there.
Perfect. Thanks. Adele?
I just want to say that in looking over the FEIR, what I find is actually there's nothing that is factually untrue about what they say, but there's a lot of things left out. And there are a lot of questions still. And there are questions about the artificial turf, which the bill is moving forward, and they're having a hearing on the 28th of this month. And it is likely to pass out of the Senate and onto the desk of the governor, knock on wood. But I don't think that those questions are fully answered in the DEIR, and I think that there are experts that are going to weigh in on that, particularly that, and also the noise. There's an expert that's going to weigh in on the noise and on air quality and on greenhouse gas emissions. So there are a lot of really open questions that aren't fully answered by the DEIR. I mean, the FEIR. And so I feel like there's a lot still to be looked at, and a lot of information come in from experts that we don't have because we're not experts. And that there's, so there's a lot of unrest in it. And even to the point that Scott made about the definition of what is community versus what is the public. And I actually know that in the DEIR, and what they say about the pool is that it's going to be open for 2 hours in the morning.
Okay.
So it's not. And also, I just want to make another correction, sorry.
Your time.
And that is that
Adele, your
the
time's
trees
up.
will reach maturity within 25 years,
Thank you.
not 50.
Okay, I believe that is the end of public comment on the first tranche of issues we're going to go through. Okay. Yes.
I have an answer to a couple things.
I don't think we're there yet, but we'll come back, I
Not this
think.
timing. Okay.
I just wanted to say something about the proposal for CUP to create no additional parking based on the way that a neighbor to the upper campus manages special events and outside people at their campus. Tree People, whenever they have a fundraiser or a large event, you park at a lot they arrange down here in the flats, and they shuttle people up to Tree People campus. Harvard Westlake is not nearly as far as Tree People. Harvard Westlake surely could use electric shuttles to bring their students to, these are organized events, not just open time for anybody on campus. So an organized event could have an organized shuttle going down the hill, electric buses, creates no need for no additional parking. We have about 100 parking spaces on the site currently. So if we're just looking at the additional traffic coming to the site being specific to Harvard Westlake folks and the community around us, then that should suffice. We have a lot less parking spaces than that at Beaman, for instance. So that's the genesis of the notion that it would be fully workable to create no new additional parking and therefore no new emissions in the community and no new traffic in the community. Parking creates traffic. Then that's where that came from, is seeing it work for decades up at Tree People. And then I'll just say that I'm not one to, no matter how long I've been doing this stuff, I fully believe that this is what the way things are going to be. I believe them when they say, and that's what a CUP is for. That's what get it in writing is for. That's what we don't have to have anybody regretting that they said, I believe that this is going to be fine. The CUP is where we can get all this in writing, a definition of community versus neighbors versus residents, who gets to access what, when, all that. That's where the CUP should be, because this is only supposed to be by the zoning, which has not changed and will not change. An open space for specific recreational uses with a couple of very small one-story buildings. That's the CUP for now. Their CUP would have to be effectively something that changes the zoning without it changing the zoning. We want a CUP that keeps it in the same zoning and that is driven by the community and is aligned with community values, community needs, and community health and safety. So that needs to come from us, not from them.
Terry.
I'm looking at the FEIR right now, and even with the reduction of a few seats, and there's an increase in one spot and a reduction in the other, it still comes out to 2,005 permanent seats. That doesn't mean that there couldn't be other bleachers, temporary bleachers brought in because they do manufacture those sort of things. So one of the things that I think that we
But, but there's no indication that they anticipate using.
No, I'm
Okay,
saying
I just want to
even-
make sure that we're not bringing up hypotheticals.
No,
that's
no,
not being
I'm
called
saying,
for.
I'm saying, reading from the FEIR, 2,005 permanent seats. Now, those seats aren't all at one venue. They're not like 2,000 seats in the gym. They're spread out through the campus. So I think an important thing that needs to be considered for the CUP is that concurrent events could not go on at the same time. So you wouldn't have 2,000 people arriving to the property on any one day, which means this is why they would need this huge parking facility. So even though the 2,005 seats might exist, of course, it would be less if a field was gone. Yeah, I think it's important that there never be a time that 2,000 people are allowed to come to the property.
How many seats exist in both gym bays that they're talking about now? So hypothetically, is that easy to get to?
Yeah.
So like if they had a basketball, if it was,
It's in the neighborhood of 350 in the gyms. So it's spread around. So if they don't have concurrent events, if they don't have a basketball game the same day that they have a tennis tournament, then they're not going to be drawing, they don't need 2,000.
right, but where I was going is if they're doing playoffs, if they have CIS basketball playoffs, they could have 3 games a day, one after the other, in each of the 2 gyms.
No, sorry, the gym, the other one's a practice gym. The only one they're gonna have a playoff in is one. They can't do 2 at a time.
So was that actually, so they would not have a contest in the practice gym?
No, there's no seating for it. There's no weight penalty.
If you look at the diagram that Patty gave, you'll see that.
I just gave it to him.
Yeah. Okay. So we have 2 thoughts there. One is limiting the amount of concurrent events slash limiting the amount of spectators and participants at any one event at any one time. So,
Right. So in my list, it was max at 400 attendees at any given event, and then you added no concurrent events.
right. So where did the 400 number come from?
I was looking at the FEIR, and when they have numbers for how many people attend their different games and events. They have, numbers for the max they've ever had, and they promise that that'll never happen here. So I was just doing the numbers based on the numbers that were provided in the FEIR, and this gives them some headroom without being too restrictive if they're going to have a single event. There shouldn't be more than 400 people in a single event, according to them.
Any thoughts on the number of 400?
Well, going from what Melanie was talking about, I didn't even see an event that brought 400 people other than special events like commencement. When they talked about their sporting events, and this is something that the representative had actually verbalized to Adelaide, that they hardly got anybody to show up for any of the practices, and for the games, they had less than 200 people. So I think maybe 400 people is a lot of people.
It was a little generous, but I didn't want them to feel too beat up.
No, I mean, going off their own statistics,
Yeah, no, and
what they historically have.
No,
They
I-
don't have 400 people come to their football games.
I went to the CIS soccer playoffs. It was the furthest Harvard Westlake had been in 23 or 28 years. It was those are the photos that I share with you. It was at Glendale High School, which was just god-awful from a facility standpoint. It was industrial scale, much bigger bleachers than they're talking about here. But when you walked across the infield, across the track, across, around the field to get to the bleachers, it was huge. But even though that event was so important, there were not 100 Harvard Westlake spectators there.
Yeah.
And that was big. So we're thinking,
I'm happy to lower that number if that's.
no, I think your point is well taken. I mean, like just the verbiage of this, yeah, thanks very much for building the facility. We didn't want, you can use it 15 hours a week, which is kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
They can use it from 3 to 8.
What was said at the initial meetings with the community was that this was primarily practice fields because they didn't have enough room on the upper campus.
Right.
So nobody comes to the practices. I mean, so I think going from their own numbers in the FEIR and the DEIR, they're very clearly, they have tables talking about every sport and how many people attended, and they have that very clearly. So I think we will use their numbers, which are far less than 400.
Okay, I'm happy to do that, and I agree. I mean, I don't think based on their initial sales pitch to us, which was, this is to relieve the horrible burden on our poor students that have to wait for practice time. That was the entire angle that they sold us on. It's a burden on our students to have to wait around campus to do sports practice. The amount of time that we're providing for them here and what we're proposing is more than adequate for that.
And what we were talking about, the reason that we would need less parking is less people are attending. One of the members of the public brought up, well, the teenagers have cars. Harvard Westlake has been very explicit that anyone attending these events or coming to practice will park on the other, students will park at the other campus and be brought by shuttle. So there should be no reason for any students in their cars ever coming to the park. That they were very specific about.
And the FEIR and DEIR are very clear that there will not be street parking in the neighborhood allowed.
Right.
So that will be part of the CUP.
Right.
Although they don't have any jurisdiction over the streets. They can make it their policy in the school and with their guests, but they don't actually have any jurisdiction on the municipal streets.
Then we could, as part of the CUP, we could ask that Harvard Westlake pay for the cost of permit parking only.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be done. It is a constant battle, but I know that at Notre Dame and at Campbell Hall more successfully, they keep the kids from parking in the neighborhood. And Campbell Hall will actually send a bus to another school for the spectators to prevent the parents from visiting teams coming in.
Chip, did you say they would pay for permit parking? Because I live in the neighborhood and I know nobody wants permit
Right.
parking.
Yeah.
But if they would pay for the police officers who have, like at the Hollywood Bowl, who way up in the hills are directing traffic and things like that, you know, if they have to pay for that, that would make sense.
Well, I don't think it's a money question with LAPD. I just don't think there's enough officers.
I doubt it. Yeah, I'm
So,
sure you're
without
right.
getting off into that, they said in their plan that they were going to patrol and provide security, including limiting off-site parking. So they have something in mind for limiting off-site parking and for policing that, so to speak.
That's what they use now.
If they have some sort of plan for that, and if indeed students coming here to practice are brought here in a shuttle, then rather than having gates to keep the public access limited, they can check the students that come in. You know, basically you came on a shuttle, great, come on in. That's another way of doing it. I'm not going to tell them how to do that, but it's feasible to limit that impact around the community through the use of bringing their kids down on an electric shuttle, which doesn't add greenhouse gas emissions to our community and doesn't add traffic to our community.
What do you want to do about the neighborhood, right? So we're worried about the public, the neighborhood just doing a drop-in. It's going to be kind of a pain if I need to go up to the upper campus. I mean, what do I do if I'm going to drop by and and park and then take the dog for a
So
walk?
there's 98 spots there now.
Right, what do they propose, when you say as part of Weddington or as part of their proposal?
On the existing site right now, there are 98 parking spaces.
Where are those?
What's it?
There are 98 parking spaces on Whitsett between the fire department and the cafe.
Plus an upper part.
Patty, excuse me, this is
So-
public comment.
So it's the parking lot, I don't know, parking lot of the tennis, golf and tennis. Now, golf is going to go away, tennis will remain. Golf gets replaced by public access, keeping 98 parking spaces. As we know, we are bound by, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in the next coming decades. The way to do that is to increase public transit and walkability. So hopefully, not everybody will need to drive to the campus, but there are 98 parking spaces.
But there are 98 now, how many surface, I mean,
17.
17.
That's what they
Now,
have
keep in
planned.
mind that one of the big issues that the community brought forward early on was that the community didn't want surface or raised parking on the site. So that was part of a Krikorian deal, right? So if we're saying we want 5 times the number of surface parking than you've proposed, we're changing.
No, we're not. We're leaving the site as it is. So
No,
the
I
existing
get,
site
I
has-
get that, but
Yeah.
what they were told is the community
But how
doesn't
many
want.
years ago was that?
No, I get that, but again, we're picking and choosing. They said it was only practice, so what happened in 2017 is valid, except that when I want to talk about parking. So I think we need to be consistent.
I will say there's a mitigating factor here, and that is the recognition that vehicles and our targets on the reduction of said things is become much more apparent. The relationship between provision of parking and additional traffic has become much more apparent to most. We consistently want to reduce and keep traffic at a minimum in the community. You can't have both of those things. And so as you learn things, you make an adjustment. If we're proposing not moving the tennis, leaving it as it is, not moving the parking, leaving it as it is, that's not so much as an add-on as it is as a don't touch this, move the smaller amount of new things elsewhere. Now we're happy.
So
So we're not asking them to build parking. We're saying leave what exists.
Okay, Lori?
I think not providing additional parking is going to put pressure in the neighborhoods. And it's hard to police that. I think, yeah, it's a good wish. Okay, no additional parking, we're gonna reduce everything, but with some of these new activities, I think, you're gonna need some more parking. And I think it's better to have it underground so you don't notice it. You don't have it asphalt, concrete, and it's hidden underneath and more green on top.
Although the green on top is going to be an artificial field based on their design.
Well,
And I'll-
not that I'm agreeing with that, but I'm just saying that.
I'll simply say
it's,
that
you know, instead of having, like a big giant parking lot.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll simply say that the excavation required to do underground parking is pretty, the impacts of that are pretty significant, and the groundwater table here is pretty high. So any underground parking will mean they're pumping groundwater, which we all know we need for drinking water supply, and they'll be throwing that down the river, throwing it out to the ocean. So any underground parking is a waste of drinking water for us in this particular location, and in many locations where the groundwater is high. They will have to pump, and they will throw that water away.
But their proposal does not indicate in their hydrology report that they're going to have to pump, right? So that was a concern we had with that.
It will.
Because we believe it will, but the city or the FEIR is saying that it's not an issue.
Right, our understanding of the city's plans in other arenas include recharging the groundwater basin. And if you've heard all the news about we're capturing stormwater, Measure W is doing good things, much of that is to recharge the groundwater basin for our drinking water supply. We're in a location where the groundwater is not that far from the surface as it is in many other places in the valley. And as we recharge the groundwater basin, that groundwater level goes higher.
Do we know how high the water table is at that
I think
location?
it's 20, between 15 and 20 feet right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Well, they have to comply with, the regulations for stormwater.
What it allows, or stormwater is a different thing, but for groundwater, what that allows when you build underground parking right now is that you continuously pump. You are allowed to discharge it into the river, you're encouraged to go for beneficial reuse, but as long as you, manage it somehow, it's still moving forward, so. Dealing with, so that they're not
as far as-
depleting our drinking water supply in order to have invisible parking, and not to mention all the excavation that goes along with that as well, the additional cost and additional.
Okay, just talking about the parking, I think with a reduction of some of the uses, that would also reduce parking and the footprint underground. But
Well, I was just gonna say, with the parking, we just determined that it's mostly for practice, which we would need a lot of parking for that, right? The students will be shuttled, let's hope, the electric shuttle down there. But in the times when there will be sports where people are gonna attend, we already determined that they didn't usually have that many people coming. So it's not like we have to worry about 400 or 500 people. It's like, we all just, it's like usually 200 or less even. So I don't think the parking will be an issue. If it is, if they're having a big event, there's the nice big parking structure at B of A.
And the shuttle.
And they can have a
That-
shuttle
that
from
as
the
well.
B of A.
That as
And
well.
that's really close.
And I would just say, again, I'll reference Beaman, which has many fewer parking spaces than this site has, and is a community park. And yes, people do park along, like people park along Midset right now, people park along main streets, but it's not something that the neighbors around Beaman feel terribly put out about.
That's actually not true.
And some of them are, but it's not the point it's become a major issue for us. And if we have a second park, it relieves pressure on Beaman. So I just don't think that just having it as open space where the additional attendees are being shuttled, and this becomes a resource just for their local community, that it's going to necessitate hundreds of new parking spaces.
I think Terry had her hand up first. And then
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, I'll be quick though. To your point about the parking, Harvard Westlake has in every presentation stressed how they have control over who is coming on this property. And since they have the luxury of a very large parking lot on their other campus, I think the opportunity to have the, whatever visiting school they might be playing against, or their own students, have them all come, have the visiting students come there and then be shuttled down, and then that leaves that close to 100 parking spaces, and traffic studies are done usually based on the maximum being 4 people per car and the average being 2. So if they're having 200 spectators and they're telling us they rarely get that, there'd be more than adequate parking because the kids are all coming on shuttle buses.
I hope so,
But
because I
logistically,
think there's going to be pressure in the neighborhood.
Scott.
But it would be very rare if occasional parking in the, it's not like an everyday thing, you know.
And we do have
once
the
or
public
twice a
parking.
year.
And just so you say, so, you know, reading from the FEIR, this is the FEIR, not the DEIR, it says, based on SB 743 and the city's tag guidance, LOS, congestion, delay, and parking effects are no longer considered impacts on the environment, and therefore such effects were not evaluated as CEQA impacts in the draft DEIR. As such, responses to comments on these issues are not required to be provided in this final EIR. So that's all the more important that we have this in the CUP, because a lot of the issues we're talking about don't fall into CEQA anymore.
But- Go ahead.
Scott?
So I think eliminating parking and then creating more open space for more surface parking is going to be dead on arrival at the board. It's going nowhere, and it will not pass a board vote,
Wait.
number one.
Okay.
Let me, please,
Yeah, but clarify for me what you mean.
let me finish.
All right,
Don't
then that's
interrupt
number
me. I
one.
did not interrupt you.
Cool.
Thank you. Where was I?
Surface parking.
Surface parking. So we're talking about expanding the surface of what's on this map for the same amount or a similar amount of parking as opposed to the 17 spots they're going to have now because the parking's in the ground. If I remember correctly, I believe one of the conditions you're asking for, or we're going to possibly ask for, is a community room that holds 200 people. You think they're going to come and park up at the upper campus and take a shuttle down? They're going to park in the neighborhood. I agree that if you don't have parking, you're not going to stop people from driving. It happens with Sportsman's, it happens with every single restaurant facility all around Studio City that doesn't have parking. Where do they park? They park in the residence. We're doing that with Sportsman's right now to get permit parking because the whole residential area is overflowed. Yes, parking is disfavored under Assembly Bill 2097, except for facilities that have events. You're still required to have X number of spots. I didn't know no parking was going to be an issue, or I would have the number for you. I'll have it for you at the next meeting. But you can't have a facility that has events without adequate parking. That is not under Assembly Bill 2097. So, I mean, we have a lot on that conditional use permit to go through of all the items that were read. And if we're going to spend all this time talking about eliminating all the parking spots for electric shuttles, I don't think we're going to get very much accomplished. That's my 2 cents.
I'll just clarify that I'm not talking about adding parking. So parse words all we like, but I'm not talking about,
To the plan right now, you're adding more surface parking.
I'll be very clear that I'm not proposing adding any surface parking to the site. I am leaving the existing surface parking intact. And I will also just remind everybody that we have, at great public expense and with great enthusiasm from the residents of this community, built 20 years ago a public parking structure that has never been even 50% used, which is less than a quarter of a mile from this site. And so for events, that can be used. And if by the time this thing gets built, if more people aren't biking as you do, Scott, or walking from their home 4 blocks away rather than driving, then we won't survive the century. So here we are.
Chip? Oh, sorry.
Well, I just have a quick, it seems like we've got twofold here. We basically have what they are proposing. And as the neighborhood council, I think there's 2 things here. We should I hope, oppose, based on on the last motion that opposed, should take each one of those things and say, they didn't mitigate that, so we can't change our minds, so we should still oppose with all those reasons, right? And I have it all, I wrote the original motion as a new one based on the FEIR and the change. Okay. So is it true that we should have two things? We should have a motion to oppose as it is right now, because I think that's what we're all thinking, right? We're not just, okay, go ahead and do everything and go home. Then the CUP should be in there, but not the specifics. That should be maybe another time, where, so at least we can get a motion in before the city meeting, hopefully, that as it stands now, we oppose it for these reasons, and say, and the SCNC is concerned about the lack of a CUP, and to, you know, and to put that in there, maybe not all the specifics that we're discussing now.
I like this, and I like the lack of specificity, and also the lack of, this should be a community-driven CUP.
Yeah, exactly.
That does as the city requests and reflects the community needs and the community health, and we haven't seen anything that does that, and it is a big one for us, so
Yeah.
we will develop that and do that in the second step,
Yeah.
but for now, and work with the council member on that, perhaps,
Exactly, yeah.
continue with this committee and the council members to get more specific on that, but for the neighborhood council, to simply say a better, stronger, community-driven CUP has been
Will be
lacking,
needed.
and it's very important. And then here are the other things that we asked questions on that really have been addressed to our satisfaction, and therefore we still oppose it based on these reasons.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. Okay, whenever you
First thoughts, comment about when you're having a place that has events that, you know, you have to provide parking for them. Well, if you're the Hollywood Bowl or you're a theater, then you know how many people or how many people can be expected to come because of how many seats you got, how many tickets you're selling or whatever. With this facility, again, Harvard Westlake is telling us very specifically, they know who's coming to it. With a shopping mall, you don't know on a daily basis. You can have an average, you can do a study and you'll see how many on an average you get. But it's not something you can control the way you can in an event and when you also own the venue. So I think that there is a way to make sure that there's not going to be 300 people showing up for 100, or 300 cars showing up for 100 parking spaces. I think that can be certainly done because this is a privately owned facility. And again, they tell us how well controlled their end of it is. As far as the public goes, again, if there's parking for 100 and it's a community room, then one would think, as Melody says, is that a lot of people would be walking over or whatever. So there wouldn't be 100 cars coming for a community room that fits 200. And then one last point about the bicycling, just so you know, the bicycles are not allowed on this walkway that goes on the perimeter of the property that specifically says no bicycles. The bicycles are allowed on the ZEV like they are now, but no bicycles are allowed on the walkway, and they stress that it's a walkway. And it actually says in the FEIR, no bicycles.
Right. And I'm also willing to reduce the number in the community room to like 150. I'm just thinking when we've had community forums, if we want to have neighborhood council meetings there, if you want to have resident association, you want to have community events. A room this size is usually pretty good, but we've had it packed, the bursting, once or twice or 3 times in the past.
Oh, yeah.
This doesn't really seat 200. It seats about 100. So just thinking, you know, and the library is way too cramped. So just thinking something a little bit bigger
We
than
got
that
2 people, 200 people.
would be great.
How
How
big is
many
the,
square feet do you think this room is?
Raise your hand if you walked here.
from my car.
Raise your hand if you took your bicycle here. Now raise your hand if you drove here. Everybody drives.
And again, how old is everybody in the room? What's the median age in this room? How many of you believe that walking is terrifying?
But
Oh,
in
good. There you
fairness,
go.
if
There's
I was
I
going
have an
to a
electric
meeting,
car.
I
There's
work in
right.
Beverly Hills. If I was going to a meeting in my neighborhood, I would walk 4 blocks. I walk to the golf course, you know?
But walking-
But I came from work, so I drove
for us.
And
But, I mean, I drove down because I don't want to walk home at night.
Yeah.
And I would normally
Exactly.
walk down here.
So,
And
to
a
Heidi's-
community
oh, I'm
event,
sorry, go ahead.
community event is gonna have people driving.
To Heidi's point, it's 20 to 8, and we've accomplished almost nothing.
I think Heidi had a good motion.
And I think what Heidi is saying is, if we bullet point, I've already written something very similar to what Heidi said,
Me too.
where we're not getting into the specificity of redesigning the place and limiting the hours. We're asking the questions, probably not supporting the project at this time due to a plethora, that's the magic word for tonight, of open issues. So we can list the open issues and support or oppose the project based on that, including a listing of experts who are still chiming in, without getting into such specificity, because we will not have a motion in time
So
for
let
a
me,
board meeting.
I do think it's important to also say that we very strongly want a community-driven CUP that reflects what a CUP should be.
And that's, I have that.
And I don't believe that there's a problem with not putting in specifics by the time the public hearing is had. So what you and Scott are proposing sounds, like the way to go. But, because even though the analysis that will be given to the CPC will be based on the public hearing and whatever letters they receive, and that will be closed on July the 12th, it doesn't mean that the other information can't come to the CPC through our council member's office or other ways. So is that how everyone else understands it? It's not imperative that we have anything that even says CUP on it by the hearing on the 12th, because it will be the CPC commission that actually makes the recommendations for the CUP.
I think it would be very important for us to put that stake in the ground, to make it very clear that a lot of the uncertainty and a lot of the way in which they're using language and the way that they're finding A, B, and C are a lot of the problems are driven from the lack of a transparent, community-driven CUP that protects the zoning and protects our community, and because we haven't weighed in on that.
but one of the reasons we haven't weighed in is that everyone has refused to actually meet with the applicant. Because we've gone and sat with them and they want to have this conversation, right? They're asking to have the conversation. They're asking to say, what do you guys want to do on Sunday? They're asking. So what we shouldn't say in the way we're putting this together is that they've been resistant. Now they've been playing semantics, but we also have not said, would you sit down with us and do a spreadsheet by amenity, which lets us know the hours and the body count of community that can get in there. And what does community mean to you? Because community means to you, Harvard Westlake, current and former students, their families, and anyone that comes into play. That's not what I see as community. I see as the hills, the flats, the river, the business area, and anyone that's ever come in to play golf or play tennis at Weddington.
But-
Those are stakeholders.
I think you're being too generous with respect to the applicant. I think when they're saying nobody wants to sit down with us, it's not because they would like for us to help them write their CUP. They've already decided what the limits of it are. They're just looking at the specifics. Oh, we're gonna have this. This gate is gonna be here. Oh, you're gonna have to apply. Just what hours of the day would you like? They only want a little input on maybe a few little
But
things here. They don't want a CUP.
We don't know that because we haven't sat down with
No.
them. And so what we need to do as part of the motion, I believe, is say some part of this committee or some part of the neighborhood council needs to go over and dive through all the mysteries. Well, they won't let me do this. Well, they won't let me do that. Let's find out and have them testify that they would put it in the legal document that is the CUP. If they are in violation of the CUP, they lose the right to use the property.
So that's exactly what we'll do for the CUP, but until then.
When do you
Do a-
want to bring the CUP up?
The
Should we
CUP
say
should-
in here
Oh,
that-
absolutely,
So-
but not this, this is what the board opposes, and I just followed the original oppose, and I gave the reasons of why the FEIR I just went on and on. But one of them is conditional use permit, and the SCNC is concerned about the lack of a CUP, and we can write it however we want without specifics, but say, that all campuses, the Holby Hills, Upper Campus, and the proposed River Park be all included. And then we could say something like that, to be determined with the applicant at a later time.
And that letter that's from them shows that, one, the upper campus grandfathers in prior to CUPs. So there is no CUP on the upper campus.
You can't have a CUP on another property. It's already stated in the final EIR. The city says, no, the CUP is for that address only.
What address only?
It's
Weddington.
Yeah, Weddington. And my concern is that the CUP is generated, it comes as a result of the zoning was originally for open space ag. They wanted to put specific sports facilities on it without changing the zoning. So they got, do you have it, Chip? Sorry, I didn't hand it to you.
What's that?
Maybe I gave it to you.
What
The CUP that exists now for weddings.
I don't have it yet.
I have it here somewhere. Oh, here it is. So the one that was created in 94, or the one that was updated in 94, it specifies very clearly the zoning stays the same, but you are allowed to have these very specific uses on the site. And every time they wanted to do something, to do a re-roof the tennis shop, they have to get a permit to do each and every one of those things, and they have to ensure that they're not violating the CUP. But it limits the uses here to the very specific driving range, tennis court, snack bar, and the zoning stays the same because they only have a one-story building. When you start to push beyond that, more than one structure, significant structure, more than one story, outside the uses that are clearly a park or a recreation area, then you're no longer in that zoning. And we want the zoning to stay the same, but to have something that allows, as this did, 20 tennis courts, a golf course, tennis control building, driving range, pro shop, and, oh, by the way, 131 paved parking spaces. Seems bigger than what you were saying. And anything outside of that would have to be very specific, but that's what keeps it in the zone. Otherwise, it's a different zone. We want to keep it in the zone, and we want it to continue to be compatible with our community. I don't think you could make it one mushy CUP for all three campuses, but we could have.
No, we've determined we can't, right? It's got to be its own CUP. And there is no CUP on the upper campus, and they are not going to say, hey, please give me more conditions. So that's dead on arrival.
But we could get a CUP for this one.
Yes, and that's what we're talking about. But when do you want to start?
But you don't have the right process. Please let me.
Sorry, is that, she not in the room?
That's okay, I'm willing to listen, because she's been
What's the
here,
right
done
process?
that. Let's see what she has to
I've done it
say.
5 times. I've written up for the neighborhood council 5 different answers to an EIR. Everything that you guys are doing now should have been done before the final came out. It should have been sent out at the time of the DEIR. The DEIR, you answer it, you say what you think is wrong, you show the backup for why. We had a 500-page document for Universal with all the backup. Every single thing that you ask a question of, then by the FEIR gets answered. If they can't answer it, then there's another process that happens, or whatever the proposal is not allowed. But whatever happened in 94 doesn't mean anything, because all kinds of rules have been changed relating to zoning. And for an A property, you can have one 45-foot building. No question, it's right on the summary. All of you guys can look up the summary of zoning. It says it on it, I just checked it before I walked in here. So a building for 45 feet is allowed.
Okay.
I have a few other answers that I've looked up
I think it's 30.
to your questions.
It's 30 for this one,
It's
Lisa.
30 feet.
There's
That's why
a
the-
room, but it's
just
not
FYI.
That's why
30
the
feet for
gym
this
is in
one.
the ground 22 feet is the
Yeah.
height limit has to
30
match
feet
what's
for this
across the
particular
street, which is
property.
30 feet.
I don't don't know what you're both saying, but I'm still
30
talking,
feet.
I think.
Well, I don't know, I don't know. You're such a close, sorry.
Yeah, it's out of order, but we are allowing it, so
Well, but you don't allow anything, only Chip does.
process.
So let me finish. There's a community room, it's not gonna be that big. The 98 parking places that are there are gonna be gone. That's where which one is it? A.
Are we talking about how we're not doing things right?
Pardon me? Oh my.
Process.
The tennis courts are not included in the 5.4 acre open space. There are chargers that will be in the parking lot, however it ends up being. The open space is not only for nonprofits. The surface parking that there will only be for disabled parking. Okay, and the rest of about the EIRs. When they have the first hearing, you guys can go there and say anything you want, but the process is already a defect because you didn't do all of this before, between the D and the F. Okay? And there's no such thing as a community CUP. The discussion needs to
Say
be
there was.
between the applicant and the community, which you probably will be able to do between the first hearing and the CUP. But there is a process, we worked on it, we got what we wanted, every time we did the 5 of them, including the parking garage. So that's the best way to do the process. So now you need to negotiate with them for what you want with them, not just giving them a great long list and say, we want to discuss. That's the best process to go for now. And go attend, and unfortunately will be a Zoom, which of course they don't get the feel of the room. The only part of planning that has to be on Zoom only is that first hearing.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
That was helpful.
Laura.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think we should, I mean, I think that we should be making demands now. Demands.
But can I just, according to Brown Act, you've got to let everybody talk from the audience now.
Well, okay, but,
According to Brown Act, you do.
Yeah, let her finish.
but I was talking.
Okay, but you went to public comment, you should finish public comment
Okay.
before going back to committee, right?
Are you talking to me or to Chip?
Both you guys.
We've opened up a little bit more of a back and forth public comment. So
I
as
just
long
wanna
as we
say-
continue with the same flow.
I'm on the same flow.
And you
I
get
just wanna
your
say-
your chance, which you will.
I just want to say, in response to what Lisa said, we did write over 2,000 pages of comments.
No, the neighborhood
that's-
council,
no.
this is the neighborhood council
No,
response.
we,
not-
the community,
No,
wrote.
no, but exactly right. This is the neighborhood,
Oh, I thought that's what you were talking
no,
about.
no, this is the neighborhood
Oh, the
council.
neighborhood council should have, I see,
Okay.
I did
Ba-
not understand.
Thank you. Back to
So,
Lori.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I mean, that makes sense what Lisa said, and I just feel like the time is, yesterday.
Yes.
Now, let's say what we want.
But so for that reason, I think we need to specifically get the CUP conversation going. And what we need to do is either have this committee recommend, what we need to do is this committee needs to recommend someone from the neighborhood council reach out to the applicant as soon as possible and start talking about the CUP. It wouldn't be crazy to actually meet with the applicant Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday prior to the Thursday night or Friday meeting to potentially have some answers to these questions.
Yeah, and Harvard Westlake's gonna play hardball.
But let's not,
Yeah,
we're not watching a baseball game.
I would like to do it with the council office in attendance.
Okay,
We don't know if they're gonna play, right? And this is the neighborhood council. The neighborhood council needs to have a decision or not about the FEIR. So we can have a hope that the CD4 group will help us, but I don't think we can stop the
No.
response.
Wouldn't expect to, just
Okay.
suggesting. And I would like to see Heidi's document. So Heidi, you looked at the comments the neighborhood council had passed before.
Right.
You made some updates to it. And it sounded like that is something that we were all leaning towards wanting to do at tonight's meeting.
Yeah.
Could you read it out
Do you
loud?
want to read it for us?
Oh, well, sure.
How many pages is it?
Just 3, 2.5. But,
Or do you want to show us where the changes are to the one
yeah, and,
before,
but I
or-
can kind of but I just had a question, though. You said too little, too late at this point, but the neighborhood council did send an opposition letter between the DEIR and the FEIR.
It's not the same thing that what I'm talking about. If you guys would have gone through the initial study.
But we didn't. So where we are now.
But I'm just saying, what you would have sent in were comments on all of the initial study with some backup to what you're saying, that you look it up online. You
And
can't just have
here we are.
somebody say, oh, this, I know all about concrete, but isn't really a person who really knows about it. And then you refer to them, and that's what you send in at that point. Then it's taken into account, not.
Here we are now.
But Lisa, this is
Here we
where we
are
are.
now.
We understand that the proper response was suppressed intentionally. So now we're sitting here. What do we do? Do we want to say anything prior to the
You need
FEI?
go to the applicant. If none of you have ever met with the applicant, that's what you need.
That is not the case.
No, that's not true.
But
Yeah.
what
I mean,
I'd like to hear,
Okay.
so
in person.
just
That
to
is
kind
not
of
the
move
case.
this thing along,
All right.
right?
Well-
It sounds like, and we'll take a vote, that what people are saying is there were 2 big issues going forward, artificial turf and greenhouse gas. We're not happy with the difference in either. So that makes us feel like we're going to continue to oppose the same way we did before.
Right.
We also need to have some very specific conversation about the CUP. And how much you're gonna let us use this project we're not going to approve. And so what that does realistically, and Terry, I'll get to you, I promise when I'm done. Realistically, if we say we're not going to approve it, but we'll talk to you, how successful is that conversation gonna be? And how do we make that successful and still say, we don't like artificial turf?
You write it in your motion.
Right. But, so how does this group come up with that? Is that something this group would like to move towards?
I have a question.
Yes.
To clarify this. So first of all, I have had 6 meetings in 2.5 years.
I don't-
I'm just saying.
We've all met with
Yeah,
them, but.
we've all met with them, good. So
Yes.
that point has been made. There's been many meetings with the applicant from very many different stakeholders. As far as the SCNC goes, if we take a meeting to discuss with them a CUP, are you saying that we're predicating that meeting on no design changes? Because you're saying if we're not saying that we're accepting the design and now we want to talk about the permissions. I mean, that's what I'm not clear about, because I like the idea where we start off saying, we don't support this project, on these 2 things, but we said in their original letter in January that these are some of the things that we have studied, because this is what we have scope to do with the number of people we have, but we also have other concerns.
Right.
Right? So I don't want to vary from that there's many other concerns, but I'm wondering, to your point, if you say, well, how do we take a meeting with them if we tell them we're not going to approve their project? But then on the other hand, how do we get away from them saying, oh, community's approved our project, we're just working on the CUP now?
Right.
I agree.
So-
So basically, if we said, don't like artificial turf, as expected, the city's showing bad leadership, you're following bad leadership, which is disappointing because we expect more from you. Therefore, we need mitigation in the way of 5 test wells every year for the duration to test for the product, something like that. The greenhouse gas issue, that needs to be opened up. How would we move towards a carbon neutral operation versus what's happening right now. Put it together. There were questions about there are new studies in the greenhouse gas piece that they had done about tree canopy, and I believe it's in year 3 that it actually gets to, it was an accelerated timetable for sequestration being positive relative to the existing tree cover.
I have that exact information. It's 18
Yeah.
years. 18 years. It's
No,
3
no.
years of construction where there's no trees, and then when they plant the trees, it's 5 to 10 years to get to 13%, and 15 to 25 years
Is that
to
the new
28%. That's in the FEIR.
Is that the new one?
Yep, but that I particularly paid attention to.
Okay, because I had a different study with different numbers that
I
was
was-
far more.
this is
No,
just-
no, I'm just saying there's multiple stuff in there.
Yeah.
So, are you saying that, why don't you read what you
Yeah.
have? And then we'll see, so let's see what we're talking about, and then with the CUP, would you recommend that the CUP get more specific about issues? So the sound, the traffic. But see, here's the other thing. If we're gonna sit there and say, lose a field, lose a parking lot, lose the pool, then are they gonna even talk to us?
Well, we don't
Well,
say
we
that
have to
before we talk to them.
We have to make those, we have to ask for that.
Yeah.
Those things, and we just have to.
And so I don't know if the board's gonna, well, we'll see what happens. I mean,
But the board, I mean, if we just do what we did before, very similar, there's not gonna talk about what we're taking out. It's just gonna be, as it stands, since the FEIR didn't make any significant changes or mitigations to what we already opposed, we still oppose it, that's all.
Yeah.
That's the first motion for this week.
Because the mitigations could have been
Actually
made,
have
that
a
things were
motion
made smaller.
ready then, if
I'm
that's what
sorry.
you-
Yeah, hold on a
you don't
second.
have to do anything.
Laura,
Honest
go
to
ahead.
God.
Laura Young?
When we're talking about like eliminating certain things or asking them to take out something, I mean, some of that should have been discussed in the alternatives.
It was.
Well, it was, and they denied them.
I know, they just said we can't, we don't need to respond
Right.
and that's the whole thing about this, the EIR is not acceptable, right?
Right, so I think our first, send a motion, EIR is not acceptable as it is. Then, once that's done, then we'll figure out the CUP meetings, we'll ask them to take a meeting with us, however we want to work that.
Well,
But I
let's
think the
figure
first-
that out. So we're gonna sit there, we're not gonna come back to public comment for a few minutes, okay?
I have a question though.
No, but we need to have this conversation or we're gonna be here forever.
Okay.
So please, let us try to stay with the process. So what you wanna say, as I follow, is that not enough has changed. There's still open questions on the big issues. We still oppose like we did. Let us get more specific about the other issues that would be part of a CUP. We'd like to have a conversation. Then in there are other things that are going on. Like, you keep bringing up golf.
Or tennis particularly, but golf too.
Right, but they've talked about the fact that they're not gonna do golf. Right?
Okay, so forget the golf.
I mean, they're really clear that they don't wanna run a golf course.
Right, I'm just talking about a driving range.
Right.
They're gonna have the putting green, but I guess that doesn't take much on any administration
For
on their
some,
part.
we're
I have
saddled,
no choice.
yeah, we're saddled with the putting green.
We,
Yeah, no, I know.
I think it'd be better if it went away,
Um,
putting green.
So, we don't like it the way it is, here's the CUP. Is it appropriate for the neighborhood council at this stage, since all the other chances have been missed, to come back and say, I'm sorry I didn't do this in '21, but I want it to be half the size? I mean,
Well, I think I think we have to, just because it didn't happen before, I mean, we have to try and salvage something for the community. And that means, keeping more tennis courts. And also another thing, I'm sorry I didn't bring this up before, if I should have, if this is inappropriate now, I apologize, and you can tell me to shut up, but, I don't know if it's feasible because it'll be such a mess and so noisy and a bunch of, just be a total mess. But would it be possible, if it didn't interrupt the critical path of construction, would it be possible to retain the tennis courts as long as possible until they have to be moved, taken out?
I think, I don't see how that happens. I think realistically, once it starts, and there'll be no tennis.
Okay, I
just think that's just realistically the way these things go down. That when they turn the key, they'll shut the lights off, turn the power off, and they'll start to clear the areas where they're gonna do that. They'll start to dig immediately for the subterranean parking garage, which we're also gonna tell them we don't wanna have.
Why haven't you guys done that already?
Can we please?
Please.
Oh, okay.
Why have we decided we're gonna tell them we don't want the subterranean parking? I mean.
No, we have, there's a whole,
I think we should work on the motion
Can
tonight.
we do that, please?
okay, so what's it?
Speculating on where your positionality is as a negotiator,
Yeah, and
let's
then
just work on the
the
motion.
We're not gonna vote on a motion
But-
tonight.
We can't vote on a motion tonight because
We can propose a motion. then.
Right, okay, right.
But also, we keep talking about the applicant, doesn't the city have some say here too? Can't we go to the city and say, hey, these are not us, not the neighborhood council, but people in general at the meeting and say, all the things that we're concerned about, and hopefully they would
Can I
perhaps.
say something?
Oh, for fuck's
Yeah, that's
sake.
okay.
Think of who your council person is now.
Lisa,
I believe she would really like the whole thing to be scrapped and put 1,000 apartments there.
okay, Lisa,
Oh,
please.
my God.
Okay, guys, please.
Okay.
I know
We
you hate
need-
studios, but when you're
Please,
moving.
we need to keep the committee work done, or I swear to God, there'll be nothing.
Stop letting it
Okay.
be.
Can we
I'd
hear
say-
Heidi's motion and then Scott's?
Yes.
Yes,
So, I added a lot of things in here, but we don't need to add those.
could you just read what you have?
Board of Neighborhood Council opposes LA City Planning Department case, Arborwood, Westlake River Park, currently submitted due to the following concerns. Greenhouse gas production. Although the FEIR has reduced the footprint of level subterranean parking garage, thereby reducing the excavation from 250 cubic yards to 197, the revised figure is still enormous and, for reference, large enough to fill over 50% of the Rose Bowl Stadium. The FEIR leaves out other components that contribute to greenhouse emissions and air quality that should be factored into the calculations, such as, and then the points we discussed, the tree canopy, the methane, the difference between the new trees and the mature trees, and then I added valley fever there, but if that was in the FEIR, we could take that out. Number 2, artificial turf. All previous concerns by the SCNC remain, as the applicant denied SCNC's request to install natural turf in the light of environmental factors, despite the growing number of U.S. cities and states now banning it from all parks and schools based on recent studies. SCNC has the following concerns regarding the use of artificial turf. The DEIR and the FEIR claims the turf Harbor Westlake plans to use does not contain PFAS. However, they test that they use measured PFAS in water, not solid objects. B, PEER, the Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, used an SPLP test, which is used to determine potential for chemicals to leach in the groundwater. On a similar brand, same company, Harvard Westlake, will install. The results came back with 3 PFAS in both turf blades and the turf backing. C, California Assembly Bill AB 1423 passed on May 25th, 2023, and is heading to Senate. The bill, if voted into law, will prohibit any public or private schools serving pupils in grades 1 to 12 from purchasing or installing covered surface containing regulated PFAS. Now, the rest I put in traffic and safety, no public benefit, as we discussed. Difference in community and public and on, but we can leave all those out if we want to stick with just the original motion, which did address those 2 things, the greenhouse and the artificial turf.
What do you have, Scott?
I would recommend staying away from scientific findings. If you read the responses in the final EIR, they're all shot down scientifically, and when they don't come from people with letterhead, and they say it's not based on fact and nothing to see here. And they already did it with the turf, they did it with liquefaction, they did it with everything. The city said turf is legal to be used. So, as Adele mentioned, there's a bill that may make that a moot point. If it passes, we don't need to worry about talking about turf. If it fails, we're not going to be able to talk about turf. The
Okay.
decision is being made by somebody else. And I think we
But we
should
can still
just
oppose it
drop
for that reason.
But I-
We're-
I mean, you won't get the votes.
We can, but Scott won't support it, and he knows a few other members of the board who also won't support it.
So they're okay with artificial turf, the board, and neighborhood
The
council?
city is. We
Right.
we have no,
But-
it's already in the final.
But we can still, it's an opinion, and we're not experts. And I know what you're saying, Scott, and you're 1,000% right, because I did read a lot of the FEIR, and that is what is used. Now, interestingly enough, even in the case where there were two professionally prepared by CEQA lawyers with attached experts with letters behind their name, separate from the SCNC responses to the DEIR that were put in, the city still said, well, according to our experts. So it doesn't even seem to matter whether you have experts behind your name. But I
That's the
get your
point. It doesn't
Your
matter.
point
So
about-
city planning is gonna go, oh, well,
But it
neighborhood council
it
doesn't
doesn't
want
mean we
it.
can't say what our community
We
feels.
don't need to say that. It's being said, it's being addressed by the legislature. I don't know why we keep talking about the turf, because it's not artificial turf, it's PFAS. That's what the state is working on. They're not working on banning plastic turf.
I understand, and I do get your point about whether, if the state doesn't pass it, then it's not gonna happen. And it's a very good, logical, pragmatic way to put it, and you're right. My point is that the neighborhood council represents the neighborhood, and if the neighborhood has a feeling, whether it's, it should be presented as how the neighborhood feels.
The neighborhood council represents all stakeholders.
Yes, yes.
So it's not just the neighborhood. So two things on that. One, since if 1423 works, we win, it's a moot point. If it doesn't and you're leaning on it, you have nothing left to lean on.
Well,
So I think we need to stop rooting for 1423 like it's a local team. We can say, we're concerned and we should stop. And I love the reference to half the Rose Bowl. I think that's cool, but I think we should still take that out as well.
Can I just say,
Well-
I think there should be maybe some small edits in here, because there are people on the board who have to vote, whether we pass this or not, who get triggered.
that's, oh,
By
I'm
certain,
fine. I
by
don't
certain
know.
things when it comes to science versus the market and, this and that, and there are people who will vote against this simply because you include a thing.
Okay.
So a careful edit around that, it might be warranted, but I don't necessarily agree with,
Okay, let's hear.
Could I say something?
yeah.
Can we just stop talking about artificial turf? I mean, I think it's a lose, it's clearly a loser.
Right.
We're not gonna get anywhere. The city's not gonna admit they made a mistake. There, it's the bill is about PFAS. If it's just we're wasting time. I mean, we have so much more to do, and I think that's, as much as I hate it, I won't even let my dog walk on it in the neighborhood, okay?
But there are other reasons besides that it gets overheated and it takes more water to cool it down.
but-
That's a fact.
We all
It
agree.
That's a fact.
It is a
Okay.
fact, but the
We all
thing is,
agree.
the city
Doesn't
doesn't
care.
want to admit they were wrong.
Okay.
And no one in the city is gonna say, we've made a mistake. And we've sent all of these plastic turfs out all over the city. That was a bad idea, we're poisoning you.
Yeah.
So they're not gonna leave
So if we
you.
take that out, do we have
Well, no.
anything for a motion?
But Scott, what do you have?
I have an idea for the artificial turf.
Yes.
And we're not appealing to the city, we're gonna appeal to Harvard Westlake, and just bear with me. We have the quote from the city where they say, furthermore, artificial turf is a consumer product that is approved for public use by all applicable regulatory bodies in the United States and in California. The project's incorporation of artificial turf fields as sustainable alternative to natural turf is consistent with the manner and circumstances for which turf fields are regularly put to use in the city. Okay, that's pretty clear.
Wrong.
Then we can say, instead, we ask Harvard Westlake to bring this question to their student body, the parents of the students, faculty, and alumni, to consider the science behind the proposed state legislation seeking to ban the use of artificial turf and to reconsider their commitment to an artificial turf field in the face of the likelihood that the product could be banned due to environmental and health risks. Is it worth it? And our appeal is not, I don't know how many of you regularly attend city planning commission meetings. I do. And these types of scientific retorts from a final environmental impact report are all dead on arrival. I'm sorry to say. That comes up with a proper appeal and or in court. We're not at that stage and we are not the body to do it. Like you said, we're the community. That's a community from the heart statement.
That's perfect.
And I think something like that is the way to go.
But is
I
that
think
the
you
way?
have an error though, Scott. Were you reading from the FEIR?
Yes,
That's not the city, don't forget, it's not the
the
city.
responses are the work product of the
That's
city.
from the city?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's from the city.
And,
It's,
okay,
it's responses to
as
comments.
long as it's not from the people that.
No, that's not, that's actually work product, I confirmed it, it's work product of the city. Some of the reports are farmed out by city-approved environmental and
Yeah.
geology and all those other fields. But this is a response from the city itself.
It's up, okay.
So that's a request to her, is that in a motion though, saying
Sure.
we're denying it because of that though, or how is that gonna write? I
We-
mean, you write it, it's, if you know how to write it in a motion, that's
Well,
great.
if you want me to keep rambling on,
Please do.
I would head along the lines of, at this time, the SCNC, I'm not gonna say it so formally and give you the case number.
Okay.
At this time, the SCNC cannot support the Harvard Westlake River Park project due to the following concerns. We await additional input from the many experts. I've been given a list. We can get a full list and what their disciplines are. We await additional input from the many experts who submitted public comment challenging the findings made by the
FEIR.
draft EIR. Although the city did respond to all comments, we feel it's important to review all rebuttals from experts submitting to the city and let that process play out. And then we're going to list the experts and their fields or the topic that they're rebutting. So our point would hopefully be, it's still a work in progress. The F is not F because there's still more comments coming in that are going to make it to city planning from actual experts, letterhead. Okay, here's the touchy one. The CUP does not exist at this time, even in the draft form. Many of the conditions will have a substantial effect on the project and the stakeholders of Studio City. A substantial amount of public comment concern issues to be included in the CUP. The SCNC wishes to be involved in the drafting process, possibly with Council District 4. Until that time, there are simply too many unknowns for us to support the project in advance of a CUP that spells out all the conditions which are so important to the community. Listed below are the topics of concerns to be addressed in the CUP. In addition, we request Harvard Westlake clearly articulate the public and community access to each of the amenities included below, defining the terms public and community when it comes to access. And then I listed them: pool, track, gym, community room, walking trail, putting green, cafe hours. One of the other things is they're gonna appoint an
Tennis courts.
yeah, I missed tennis.
Pool and pool?
Pool, I got pool on there, but I mean, this is just for discussion, so it's not.
You should have led with this. We could have saved us an hour.
I wanted to hear from everybody else first. I'm the closer. We also probably want to put in there some type of commitment to not build housing of any kind. SB 4 from our buddy Scott Wiener is streamlining the process for religious organizations and educational institutions to develop housing on their property regardless of local zoning restrictions. There's already a school up on Mulholland Drive that is proposing student housing. And I think that could be a wonderful amenity for some students for Harvard. We probably want to have a line on that.
I suppose.
They could have camps.
Can I ask one thing? This all sounds great, like, yeah, you should have led with it. No, but the other thing is that, is there a way to somehow put one line in there when you're listing pool and track and everything, that the mitigation of which may involve design concepts or something that doesn't completely make it sound like this project as it is isn't acceptable just because the CUP hasn't been worked out. That's what I'm wondering. If that sounds like that to anybody else, we just don't want to make it sound like we've accepted the design of it and all the other CUP things are mitigating things. So I think one line in there to say that, you know, something about mitigating may include design
I mean, it's
options.
design change.
I'm not done.
Oh, excuse me, I apologize.
There's
Please do.
more.
Be back for that 30, take over.
Okay. We also want to request something along these lines, and we have to come up with the verbiage, maybe lawyers need to write this, but short, that much of what's in the DEIR and the FEIR, these are all based on estimates. We think this much noise, we think this much light, we think this much carbon, traffic, everything. They're all based on hypotheticals and theoreticals. So we want something in there that all those estimates then get confirmed in the real world once this thing is up and running. So when they say the noise is most likely not to be above whatever measurement, and we have noise monitoring, for instance, and it is above that measurement, well, it has to be mitigated. Same thing for all the other items that are estimated. I've seen this in other recommendations, but I haven't seen it. It probably exists in conditional use permits too. This is a bit of a different project. And I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for these estimates that are in good faith, possibly, to be confirmed. So that's one of the points. Also, I don't think there's anything wrong with us saying we reject the misleading title of the project as a river park. This is counter to the public's perception of what a park actually is. The publicly accessible portion of this project is a walking path around the property and not a park, such as Studio City Rec Center or any other park we know of in the San Fernando Valley. We are open to discussing the possibility of a park or parklet, perhaps at the Bel Air and Valley Spring Lane corner. If the pool is removed from the sports complex and perhaps one of the fields, the track can be repositioned so to avoid any contact with the county land and allow for greater public open space on the western end, as in a park.
You really should have led with this.
Yeah, no,
I was prepared to do this at the last meeting, and we didn't have a quorum, and I had to keep my mouth shut.
I'm so sorry.
So, and then you already heard my rant about the turf. So if this can be a framework
Yeah.
for the motion, and just pile on to that, because that's not 100% complete. That was just a stream of caffeinated consciousness.
That's not even your A game, is that what you're saying?
No,
Pile on to that
I didn't work on it again because I wanted to work on it.
Here.
So process question.
I have one
Wait.
question. Can I just ask one?
Oh, goodness.
I wanted to hear from Lori. Lori?
Lori.
You had said something about the FEIR not being complete. Could you finish that thought?
Well, it just seemed like every time there was a response or a comment, they would just say, well, we don't have to, answer that because it didn't address it in the
Right.
draft. I think, the whole thing is, this doesn't comply with the land use element, the general plan, because of the use. This is not really open space. If you look at it, and all the activities and the uses they're doing is driving the whole thing. All the parking, these 80-foot lights, the walls, it's because the use is too intense. And they're saying that it complies with the general plan.
And that's not.
It's not really open space. You look at the whole plan and you can see everything is
It's all in
packed.
That's why I was asking my question about if the tennis courts are open space. Because what are they calling open space? And you made it their point more articulately than I did, is that, yes, this project is not open space.
Right, and if you add an 80,000 square foot building, that's not part of what we consider open space.
But I do think that Scott's motion is addressing this. Do you not, do you think there's something to add to it? Or,
No, I mean,
but I agree with you 100%. Like, that's what I found. I mean, what's the point of having public comment and inviting people to comment on the DDR and then saying there's no data to support this?
Right.
Like, I wrote a letter, and I started my letter saying, I am not a professional architect, designer, or urban planner. However, I've lived 4 blocks from the property for 36 years, and I've driven on the streets every day through every season, every holiday, and this is my firsthand experience. And the comment was, there's no data to support this. Well, duh.
it was, I thought how they're so arrogant, how it's written.
Well, it does seem that the response perhaps also after doing this, maybe there's also a response to Department of Planning saying that we found that the FEIR was insufficient and inadequate in its answers to the public comments. As they were live, maybe there's 2 separate motions we could do, like one, not touching Scott's, and it's only gonna get better because that was, like he said, he doesn't give us the highlights. But there might be a second motion that goes to the planning and the councilman's member saying that and the mayor saying the FER is inadequate and insufficient in its answers to the public.
I guess the city already reviewed this and went along with this.
Yes.
That's
Found it
that's the
acceptable,
concern.
so-
Yeah.
The concern is that the city seems that they're fine with the project.
Right.
No matter how valid all of these questions are and all the observations that this stakes, it's moving ahead anyhow.
There are plenty of alumni in positions of power who made it very clear that this was to move forward without any pushback. And that's one of the things we're fighting in the city right now. I mean, the reason we have indictments and
This might be
resignations
the most opportune,
are
most
over,
opportune
are over,
to voice.
are over corruption on land use practices. And I think one of the things that would be great to have in, that you said that's very simple and clear, is that this takes it out of the land use, the land use plan, which is what we've talked about the whole time, the zoning and the land use plan for this community. This is not open space. It doesn't, by any stretch of imagination, maintain this as open space. And, but the language that she used, being in our motion, might not be a bad thing. But I have a process question before we get all everywhere. So 2 people here have drafted motions, both of which have merit. And there are a few other questions about things we might not want to leave out. Given that we can't convene to write what you read, can that be shared with the committee? There's a motion that Heidi
It
read
is, it was.
in
I'll print
paper.
it, sure.
Okay, so you could share both Heidi's motion and your motion, your draft motion with the committee.
Absolutely, and the
Great.
public.
Great.
Oh, no.
And that'll be in the
I read it
timely,
publicly.
in a timely way so that we can all review and
That's the point, yes.
rate. And then that would be at the next meeting and then to refine it and vote? Is this
Yeah,
what we're getting at?
you'd
Good.
all come with your red pen.
Right, great. Good.
Just one more thing, it was never zoned as open space. City already corrected that.
No, the
It's-
land use, is the land
It's
use open
open
space?
It's agricultural
It's
open space.
agricultural
on all
open
the
space.
lots.
It's not the same as open space.
It's A1 open space.
Right, which allows it to have very specific uses and very limited number of buildings on it. Agricultural buildings,
That's the zoning, the A1, but the land use was open space.
That's only suggested.
It-
It is done.
It says the project site was never zoned OS. The zone change was
Right.
discretionary on the part of the owner who could have by right subdivided the property into 150 residential lots consistent with the surrounding residential neighborhood if the owner elected to do so.
I'm sorry, Scott, what are you reading from?
I'm reading the city's response to comment IND 209-9.
Okay, because just so for everyone's reference, and I'll tell you from my historical research on this, the property was originally zoned R1, R3. And it was only when the owners were going to lease the property for 50 years that they got a conditional use permit. And it remained R1 to R3 until the early 70s, when because of the property taxes across the state being reevaluated, all across the state, and the taxes were going to go from $7,000 a year to $56,000 a year, that the owners of the property approached the councilman at that time, Joel Wax, and asked for a zone change. So the owners of the property asked for the zone change, and the zone change was to A1. Okay, so had they not had the zone changes, this would be a whole other conversation. But the owners at the time wanted it changed, and because they were providing a public benefit with an open access piece of open agriculture to the neighborhood, that's why in Joel Wax's comment to city council as to why they should vote for that zone change, that was the reason, because they were providing a recreational access, open access to the public. Okay.
Private property. It spells it all out in the final ENAR that it is not open space due to the fact that.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying the zoning was changed to A1.
Yes, but
Yeah.
not OS.
Well,
And that's what it is now,
OS or A1?
A1.
I know, I thought I was talking about the
And the
land
only
use.
reason-
The land use in the general plan is what she's talking about, the zone,
Sorry.
not the zone, the land use in the general plan.
What?
She's referring to the general plan and the land use
Unfortunately,
designation.
whatever the zone is, really is over that. And the reason that we haven't had apartments built there for 25 years is because the Residents Association and the neighborhood council worked as hard as we could to make sure that the zone didn't get changed back to the R1. But I don't know what Melanie thinks, but what I think about Councilwoman Ryan is that she would want it to be R1 in
That's an
one.
opinion.
Not
and argument
at all,
we're gonna consider.
not at all,
Okay, well, that's what she said to me.
not at all. We would not make that.
Okay, well, so. 829. So we have, so in rough terms, we're gonna look at Scott's motion,
Scott's and Heidi's, yes.
take the pieces of Heidi's and put them in Scott's and greatly improve Scott's with Heidi's. And then we're gonna add some of the other, my consideration for my version of this would be to take some of the CUP issues and really flesh those out. And also where in the motion in January, when we said, specifically, we said that this wasn't the tier map, there in here, what we had said was other issues. The list above is not comprehensive of the concerns of the members of the ad hoc committee, nor the many community stakeholders who contributed to the conversation that led to this motion. This motion is limited in scope to the specific issues the ad hoc was formed to review. As the as a project moves forward through the approval process, there will need to be additional opportunities to seek amendments from the developer. Satisfaction of the concerns above does not guarantee support for the project absent consideration of other topics. We did not specify other topics, and I would think that it would be appropriate in here to kind of flesh out what the other topics were so that everything is here. But in this is not lose a field, lose the parking.
No.
I want a trap and skeet range. I want a helicopter pad. I mean, none of that's in here. So there's no physical changes that are part of this. When does this committee feel that would be appropriate, or is it the purview of the neighborhood council to take that sort of a proposal forward, or is it not a neighborhood council purview to do that? That's what other 501(c)(3)s that are designed expressly to do that sort of thing do.
They're not.
What sort of thing? You mean
They're
the
not
CUP?
designed expressly to do that. but-
Is it too late, and should the neighborhood council focus on a more narrow piece, or are you thinking that we will have a motion to put in front of the board that says we want these significant physical amendments to the plan?
I don't think we should. I mean, I don't think it passed.
The concern is, will
Well,
forward.
I mean, we all asked for a lot. You know, my sense is that what we were gonna do is, you know, pare it down.
I thought we should do it twofold. The
Okay.
motion is opposing it as is due to the concerns.
So there should be, I'm sorry for interrupting, but maybe there's another number, there's a number 11, that is recommended physical changes to the site plan.
Number 11?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's another, right, there's a number 7. There's another number in there.
So I think
In the motion.
one of the things that Scott was trying to wordsmith into his was these things that are important to us may lead to design changes in order to comply
Yeah,
with
Yeah,
what's
let's go with
important to us.
Yeah, that was,
Which
I don't
was-
think it has to be
Specific.
Which was a door opener, but, and it also left the door open to development of the CUP, which could also get us to further than that. But I think what you were pointing to in your letter is something to consider and look at when we're also looking at the motions.
And
yes?
this was the motion on January 12th that was approved.
Right, so that section of it.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned public access to items that we also may vote to not want.
Right.
It doesn't mean there's gonna be a pool, but if there is, it's the access.
Well, and that's one of the things, right? If we end up going in, saying, what does the pool look like? And we find out that even if it's a significant number of hours, the cost to the community outweighs the benefit of those hours of pool time. After consideration, then it comes in. Then the conversation about losing property isn't something where it just doesn't look right. It feels like there's an awful lot of give me half, and we're not Solomon.
I just have one really quick question. Is there gonna be a pool cover? There is gonna be a pool cover
in the
to
FAQ.
avoid
There isn't one
evaporation?
on the Coldwater property.
Is there gonna be
No,
one on
there
this? I don't think so.
I don't think it's that specific.
I thought I read in the FAR that they,
It's a canopy, it's
Yeah.
going to look over the pool, not the pool.
So that's not gonna
Right.
mitigate evaporation.
I thought that, yeah.
No, there's no mention of the pool.
Scott, what is your sense of an appetite for something in there saying fewer facilities or losing X, Y, or Z for the board?
I-
In the specific rather than general, rather than
What,
sneaky.
what I think will happen is, remember, we're gonna have a special meeting on the 26th, and there'll be, I imagine, quite a bit of public attendance. So we're gonna have a lot of public comment, and when whatever we come up with, however good we think it is, I guarantee you it's gonna be amended more than once. Then it goes back to public comment, and then it comes back for more amendments. And at some point, we're gonna run out of time to be able to consider something this complex if we try to make it too
I
complex
don't think we should.
for a board vote, and then it'll be midnight, and then we'll adjourn and we'll have nothing. That's what I think we should steer clear of and still keep things a little bit open-ended and not get into the very specifics.
Yeah, you already said our motion is because there's too many questions left open, so how can they deny that? How can
Right.
anybody make a public comment, say, no, I mean, it's very clear, just say, we cannot approve this as it is stands now, because there's too many questions. You know, it's just like what you read is perfect, and I
It's
can't
not
see
perfect,
that.
you guys will change it
Well,
and make it much better.
No, it's
Well,
really good stuff.
But it's the.
Really good.
the-
Really good.
Really
The tone of it, or the,
It's really good.
Let's go on. Let's-
yeah, so I don't think it should be too complicated. Just work on yours and make it general, not
I'm not
specific.
gonna work on it. You guys work on it.
Sure, send it
Share
to
it,
us and
yeah.
we'll work on it, sure. Mine, the only thing in mind, we have to leave the artificial turf
Well,
out.
that's the thing. So
Well,
Thursday,
His wording,
The 26th, right?
yes,
Yeah.
6 on the 26th.
The 26th, yes, but we need to meet again
make the motion.
to, so everyone does their homework, and the agenda, we'll figure out a way to.
It would be
Right.
Friday night, wouldn't it, because it's Tuesday?
I think Thursday's a bad idea.
You think, so Friday night,
Really, people's Friday night?
that's fine.
Well, I mean, we can't compete with the
With Radford.
event on the Radford lot. I want to go to it, so I will,
What
I'm,
event?
No, Friday night's fine.
there's an event
I
here.
don't know, right?
Okay.
So
Lori, can
six-
you do Friday night?
Lori,
Yes,
Or Saturday day.
Or Saturday day?
Friday early.
Saturday
Friday
day.
I'll have to see if it's available to do on Saturday.
Would
If-
you-
Or
if
Friday
people-
early, 5:30, so we
Lunch,
don't have the
lunch
whole
hour.
evening. you know.
Instead of lunch.
Well, can you get back from Beverly Hills before?
On Friday, I can get here by 6.
can you jump?
Or I can get here by 5. On Friday, I can be here by 5:30 or 5.
Okay.
Would you
So
prefer
early
to
on
do longer
Friday.
Saturday during the day or Friday night?
Saturday. I mean,
Yes,
it's not a, what?
Saturday,
We got to check with the rest of the committee too,
Right.
to make sure we.
Well, at that point, it's
But if we're a
Peter, because
quorum-
Alex is not going to
He's
show.
back on the 22nd.
well, we're talking about this week.
Oh. Today's the 19th.
I did.
We are allowed to discuss scheduling outside of a public meeting.
Saturday, it would have to be, it'd have to be morning.
So what time, Lori, on a Saturday works with you?
Anytime.
Anytime? Saturday works for me except from 11 till 1.
Oh, that's.
But I can do the
only time it
morning or
works
I
for
can
me.
do the afternoon.
I think Friday,
Or Friday.
5:30, I think Friday, 5:30. Are you able to make it though, or is it just inconvenient, or are you able?
Yeah, I can make it.
Okay. I mean, is that?
Well, it's
I can
just-
do really
And
important.
it's a committee meeting and it shouldn't take too long.
No,
You should have a motion ready to go by then, right?
Yeah,
No, we should each have a version of a motion that will then be discussed.
We'll patch together the motion, but that's, the public's really going to want to weigh in on that, I would imagine.
to keep it
So,
real general.
what time, 5:30 or 6?
I got to make sure the lot is available for us on Friday.
And would you want me to invite the applicant to join us
On Friday?
for a motion?
I think that would guarantee it be a midnight meeting. I do.
But is it
We can't
important?
exclude them.
Is it
Well,
important to?
what, do we have to
I
invite?
would say,
You are out.
they can be invited, but
They
not
can
to
read-
present
They
and
can
then.
read it and come if they
Well,
want.
they come to any meeting,
Yeah.
but they don't. Do they?
It would be bad form to deal with the land use issue, come up with a motion and not have the applicant able to present.
Present?
But they presented several
presented
times over the last 2 years. They have nothing new to present to us.
We've addressed this several times as well. We
And
have
they've been
something-
invited to every meeting. They have been aware of
It's a
every
big
meeting.
mistake.
Should they come and
To
present,
not,
Lisa?
I don't
This
recall a
stage.
land use issue
Anything should be offered the opportunity.
To
ever,
present, to.
well, they're not gonna,
They don't have to present.
they're not gonna present the whole project, that we can list them.
So to have a comment.
Sure, they're welcome to come for a comment, but like last one, you said they present for 20 minutes. I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, agreed.
I think, just
It
say,
presented already in the FEIR.
No,
There's
they
nothing
did
new.
not.
What are the, yeah,
what are they gonna, yeah.
I see your point, and I think they
They should be afforded the right to discuss what we are proposing.
Yes.
And I think it's very
I would say it
unfair.
as a presentation, then I would
Well,
say,
not
and
that in
to
the-
comment, to respond.
Because they will get more than 1 minute or 1 minute and a half,
You
whatever.
announce it to the public and they come, oh, fine. But why do you have to make a special invitation?
Because that's.
They're
Because,
the
they-
applicant.
because
If you guys want to risk a cure and correct, go ahead. I think it's foolish, it's unwise.
Because
It's
if
only
they're
20 minutes.
only public comment, you're only supposed to get one 90-second response. Or one 1-minute response.
You can make.
If they're on the agenda, then we can speak with them. If they're not on the agenda, then they only get one 1-minute response. Whenever it's public comment, that won't answer the questions of the committee,
Okay.
But you can extend that when you ask them.
not for public comment.
Well, then, Chip, can you not put them on the agenda as giving them 10 minutes to respond to
Yeah.
your opening comments or respond to the motion, rather than getting up and talking about the project again? Like, if the meeting is about drafting a motion, and they come to the meeting and the meeting, and the motion is in the agenda, it would be. or
It
we're
won't be,
still
because
working
we're
on it.
not gonna have
Okay.
the emotions.
So do you give them 10 minutes to respond to the
Potential.
initial discussion. Like if item 1 is discussion of motion, do they get 1B is applicant gets 10 minutes to respond to motion. But if they come and make a presentation and it's just about, oh, we're gonna do all these wonderful things, whoever is here is going to be, it'll be the villagers at the gate again, and it'll, like you say, it'll go on till midnight, nothing will get done.
Right, and that's
So-
the problem.
Yeah, so to Scott's point, I don't think there's a reason not to invite them, but presentation
If they're not on the agenda,
You can
I
put it
get
on
it.
the agenda, but just don't
what
say
semantics wouldn't
presentation.
have the villagers at the gate?
Well, what I'm saying is that if they're there to respond to the discussion of the motion, I mean, however you write the agenda, what you're inviting them to do. We don't need another presentation about the project because the FER came out 2 weeks
Do
ago.
you think that people hearing response versus presentation are going to be any less likely to come in this
I
meeting?
do, because I think if they show up, then you say, this is the, what's Harvard, but just so you know, if you thought we're not going into what the project is again, we're talking about this motion. I do, I think you, as chair of the meeting, you can present that to people and let them know that we're not here to rehash the
Response.
thing again.
And you can give them a time limit.
Yeah,
That's what I said, 10
Response
minutes.
to motion.
response.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
take
Response
presentation
to-
out.
It's not so, I'm not worried about their response to the motion. I'm worried about sitting here and hearing the same stories
Well,
until midnight, which is going to prevent us from getting anything done.
well,
And if we're not going to get anything done, let's not have a meeting.
let's
That's
find
what-
out what happens when it happens. Let's not, and I think enough of the community understands now the process. But if you put presentation, I wouldn't recommend that. Put response, that the applicant's given the chance to respond to the motion.
Yeah, if item number 1 is discussion by ad hoc regarding possible motion, and item 1A is applicant is given 10 minutes to respond.
Yeah.
I think it's a very bad idea to try to limit their ability to speak. And they should be afforded the opportunity to, if you don't want to say presentation, it's not going to be a slideshow, it's not going to be multimedia, they're going to make some kind of an opening statement as well. They're the applicant. It's a ginormous
We know,
land use
we
project.
What's the difference between 10 minutes and 20 minutes other than 10 minutes? I mean,
It's
Well,
not
this-
like
Well,
the
no,
board-
they'll get to address and answer questions regarding the motion and
Exactly.
contribute.
And
But
they
they
also-
also get to open up with,
Their interpretation of how the FEIR is different from the DEIR and what they plan
I
to do.
mean, let them
Well, then
pitch
can you give
it.
them 10 minutes on that then at least? I mean, you can limit their time on it.
yeah,
If
why
they want
can't it be 20?
if they want to say why
Well, but
they're.
it was. That would have been the Harvard Westlake presentation, 20 minutes from the Wednesday where we didn't have a quorum. And that's what everyone's objecting to. Right? So if we said, give us the presentation, give us the discussion of how do you see the FEIR? Do you see, I got everything I wanted, and I'm laughing all the way to the bank? Or do you see this as being a conversation? What do you guys want to
In
do?
fairness, I think that the agenda item as it was written on that agenda, and how I read it, was that they were going to make another one of their presentations where they come out and say a lot of things that we have felt have been, or some of us have felt were rather disingenuous. And that would have riled up everybody to complain for hours and hours. If it's listed as a presentation. So I think if it's worded differently, it might have some.
Again, which words?
Presentation.
Don't, yeah, just
Presentation. no
Nick say,
presentation.
Response to FEIR?
yeah,
Yes.
And discussion of potential motion.
yeah,
Does that work?
yes.
I think so.
I doubt it, but we'll see.
So they get two bites at the apple.
Why?
They talk before the motion,
They
then
get
they
to
respond.
open with what word that do you want to use besides presentation? Is soliloquy?
Response to the
I
motion.
mean,
Yeah,
they
thank
can
you.
talk about
Why?
we haven't heard them speak about the FEIR and give us their analysis of what changed and what they plan
They
on.
already
But
did, we
isn't
have
it
it right
in the
here. in
report?
writing.
They haven't
That-
given it to
They
us.
paid for that, they paid for that,
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that's right
FEIR.
here. They don't-
That
That's
is
from the
their
applicant.
response, Scott. That is their
No,
response.
that's not.
They're
That's the
gonna be
response
respon-
that was done by the
They
company
haven't
that
responded
did.
to us. Let them, what, such hostility against letting them speak
No, no,
is
no.
not a good look for us. Let them speak.
No, I'm not, no.
It'll be a
Like-
3-hour meeting and at least, and
No, you're interpreting it as hostility. I'm not being hostile at all. I
You
think that
said
they should.
disingenuous and.
No, I did. Some people felt some of the things they said were disingenuous. It's been written in a lot of the comment letters. I mean, that word was, do that iChat thing.
You don't want them to speak because you
No,
think
I'm
they're
not,
gonna
no,
say
Scott, don't
something
put words in my mouth.
disingenuous.
I am
That's what
not
you
saying,
said.
nope, it's not what I said.
Totally.
And it's luckily this is on TV.
Let's put it this way. They'll speak,
No, let
okay?
me finish, is that I'm not against having them speak at all. All I'm saying is, I don't see why you feel that they are not being allowed to speak. If you put them on the agenda, they're going to be allowed to speak. I'm just saying, why would it be 20 minutes? It seems like a long time. And why would there be two parts to their response? That's what I'm just asking.
So if
I'm not
it's
saying don't
5
invite
minutes-
them, I'm not saying they
If
shouldn't
it's
speak.
5 minutes extendable by chair, does that make you feel better?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And the two was,
Were you guys present when we did this with Sportsman's?
I was at lots of sportsmen's meetings. Which one are you
When we did
referring to?
exactly this, when Ben came and made a presentation and then did questions and answers. And it was called a presentation.
There was one that wasn't in this room that was
The
in our.
Skia, it wasn't an F. It
Well, was it after ski?
Yeah.
It was after.
Well,
ski?
it's one of the finals.
I attended lots of those meetings. I don't know which one you're referring
Yeah,
to.
we didn't stifle the applicant on such a major land use issue.
There's one
Well,
way
you
you
can
can
say
shorten
stay.
a meeting, and city council does this on everything. If people gave comment on a prior meeting, then they don't get to do a comment on the next meeting. And even when it goes to city council, if you made a comment at the committee meeting, they don't have to let you make comment.
but the way, the audience is gonna be different. If they were the same people coming, totally get that. That's not gonna pertain to this.
It was also problematic because the last meeting wasn't a real meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
There's no-
Also, Wilson County City. That was, we're taking.
We will try to come up with verbiage, but the plan is
I think, well, yeah.
for
what
them
he
to
said,
speak
10 minutes
and then
extendable
to
by-
speak again.
And they may only have a statement to be read and save the personal appearances for the board meeting, just because they have a concern that their presence will prevent anything from being done. And they also don't want to sit in a hostile room for no reason.
And would
I
I
don't blame
assume
them.
then that at the board meeting, they'd be given maybe, 45 minutes or an hour perhaps?
Why?
Well, because you want to let them present.
Minutes.
Well, just because you want to stifle them and maybe
It's
have
the
a lot to
same-
say.
Well, what else, I mean, if they're gonna,
What would make you say that?
Well, just because it's the opposite of what you were saying, that I was trying to prevent them from speaking, and so I was saying, well, do I assume that the idea would be at the meeting that this was not of, that they would be given an extraordinary amount of time to speak?
How about just an ordinary
that's a good
fair
idea.
amount of
Ordinary,
time?
I think
fair.
that's a good idea.
Ordinary, fair,
Yeah.
responsible, meaningful.
In our board meetings, when we're discussing land use issues, the applicant is there, they're listed on the agenda, and they get to speak.
But usually
The
less
initial.
than what they speak at committee meetings.
But not a presentation.
Yep, not,
Yeah, not a
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
They
I
give
mean, like a
presentations to
presentation of,
committees.
they're ready to if it's needed.
It actually
Usually
is,
it's not.
when you think about it with land use, it is appropriate for them to come and give a presentation.
Land use,
Because that's what we
absolutely.
did. We got a presentation.
We're looking at the menus of restaurants.
Right.
Why wouldn't we ask what you're gonna do with your baseball field?
Because we already know, they have it in the FEIR, the DEIR.
We
it's
do
been going on
not
for 3
have,
years.
we do not have a calendar that shows us, imagine a workbook with each of the amenities, Monday through Sunday. Here's the pool, here's this, we don't have that.
Well, they don't either.
Yes,
They
they
already
do.
said in the FEIR, they said that they can't commit to certain amount of times because of the associate, I just read it, but that they can't tell you how long the games will be because the
They
affiliations.
can't tell how long the
don't.
seasons will be because they don't, the CIS controls the season. How many games are in a
So
season?
what are you asking them to give?
We could still ask for a prototypical week, you know.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah. It's gonna be a long meeting, you can't avoid it, sorry.
But not the next one, the one
Not the next
after
one,
that.
the one after.
Oh, they both are gonna be,
The board meeting, can I make a
Yes.
comment?
sure.
This gentleman I spoke with earlier,
he made comment, and I don't know what's true and what's not true. I know these people can talk a lot of stuff. But he wants information about opinions on things like how late should the tennis courts be open, how early, how late, that kind of thing. And not on a general reconstruction of their plan. I don't know how long this plan has been it has been designed like this. I mean, has this been around for 3 years?
Yes, that exact one.
So it seems, he said that, they've been working on this for 5.5 years and are getting a bit frustrated with the delays. And
what delays are they frustrated with?
the whole process.
The council.
The whole
Well,
process.
the neighborhood council hasn't slowed this down.
We really have not.
Well,
The labor council hasn't participated.
Yeah.
So we couldn't be blamed for slowing it down.
That's not true. They want
They'll
something
bitch
from
about
the
whatever.
They do, but Lisa, we haven't slowed anything down. We haven't sat down and had the
something
responsible
has caused it
conversation.
to take 5.5 years to.
And it was-
It's the city, COVID, the city, it's not the neighborhood council.
Yeah,
Okay.
seriously.
No,
No,
I'm not, I didn't say, I don't think I said that. Anyway, so the question is, that I have, is he was talking about how having the tennis courts and having the golf is totally was up to them, and they're doing this as a community thing. They didn't have to keep those open.
They said that a lot,
Yeah, they
and they
do.
are
What's that?
losing money. They say that a lot, and they are losing money keeping it open, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We're aware of that.
And so they could close it tomorrow. I mean,
Tomorrow.
if we're talking about expanding and keeping this and they could close it tomorrow if they wanted to.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
They could have,
So-
however, 2 years ago.
To your point, Chip, I will tell you, their 990s are posted because the school's a nonprofit every year. They haven't posted their 2022 yet, but the golf course is separated out as an asset, and it is generating more money than it's.
But COVID, I mean, that's where people went. There's no question about it.
No. There's also been, even before COVID. there's been
Terry,
an-
it's not,
They're not losing money on the golf course is my point.
they also don't have to keep it open. And in fact, it's
No, they
creating
don't.
more trouble for them keeping it open than if they
990
closed
the
it.
other way.
I don't think so. I think they'd draw attention to it more if it were to close. I think all of a sudden there'd be a lot of media.
They're not gonna run a golf course. I believe
I hear
them.
you. I hear what you're saying, but I'm just saying that the golf course.
Yes, and you're right. They want us to stop talking about getting rid of their fields and talk about what we're gonna do with the amenities they propose to put together. That, you're absolutely right. That's what they want. And there's,
So talking about getting rid of the pool and.
is news to them.
It's what?
It's gonna be news to them.
It will be news to them,
Yeah.
okay. So.
But are we
they
gonna
will-
go
They will
that
have
far?
a reaction.
Are we gonna start-
If
I
you
don't
bring
know
that
if
up,
the
give
neighborhood
them a
council
time
should
to
go
talk
with
I
about
don't,
that.
I agree.
So we'll
I don't
see.
think so either.
Right, so we'll see, because there's a lot of different groups. And
Yeah.
it would be irresponsible of the neighborhood council to hold a position that's gonna be shot down and not have a seat at the table
Exactly.
to discuss the other things. That is
But
what,
why
just
would one preclude the other?
because if we say we're opposing a project and we want half of it cut down, but let's talk about the tennis courts, they're not gonna talk to us.
What, they have to talk.
They don't have to talk to us till it's done.
No, they have to talk to us for the CUP. They
Right.
do have to talk to us for the CUP
By when?
before it's finalized. They absolutely do. That's part of the conditions of the conditional use permit is about the buy-in of the neighborhood. That's specifically written. I will call it up for you, but there's 3 criteria for conditional use. One is that they're providing a public benefit that is greater than what they're taking from the community, and one of it is that they have the community support. The community feels that it is a betterment to their health and welfare and whatever. I can't remember the
I think
actual
those are,
terminology.
those
I'll
are
pull it up for you.
fundamentally things that we cannot answer in the affirmative right now. And the thing is that they're
But
proceeding
we don't
with.
lose a
but
seat
we
at the
just-
table if we propose something they don't like.
Yeah,
So just to be clear, what I wrote, I may not support what I wrote. I wrote it as a framework for us to be able to move forward and not have 3-4 hour meetings. And I tried to include everything I heard from the public and from the committee.
Yes, I think it's good.
That does not necessarily mean I'm in support of what I read out
Oh,
loud.
no,
I
no,
just
Scott,
just
you're totally behind me.
want to be really clear
No, I hear you.
that I may then argue against some of the things. I just wanted them included for discussion.
If
Because
you are-
we were
if you are-
really getting into the weeds at the beginning
No,
of
I hear
this.
you.
And I actually found it quite frustrating at the pace of our progress.
Well, I
Or
think we
lack
made
of.
good progress. I think we clarified a lot of things, and I think that for one, think that Scott and Heidi's combined motion would be a good step forward, and I'm happy to come back on Friday to chisel that down.
So we're gonna meet Friday at 5:30, was that the?
After I confirm with
After we confirm
Bradford.
the room?
We can adjourn before 9, then I'll be here Friday at 5:30.
Okay.
We'll see.
Is that
That's a
motion
tall
to
order
adjourn?
if we're working on a motion.
That's a motion to adjourn.
Lori, would you second her motion?
I
Because
second
when
it.
we amend,
We officially have adjourned at 8:59.
Okay, thank you.